It is 5:01, and this is a special meeting of the Kent School District Board, which is held in public to comply with the Open Public Meetings Act. We thank those of you who have come to this meeting and those who are viewing via our live stream. The purpose of this special meeting is a Board Superintendent Governance Team retreat. We will start this with roll call. At this time, the board will take roll call for attendance. Each board member will indicate their presence by saying present. Director Cook?
Present.
Director Williams?
Present.
Director Song? Director Song is absent. Vice President Gregory?
Present.
And I am present. Thank you all for being here. And as we move in, I just really want to say thank you to Sandy Hayes for returning again for our board retreat. And I will turn it over to you, Sandy.
Great, thank you. So this one is going to be a little less touchy-feely and more pragmatic this evening, and we're going to jump right in. So before we get started, just to kind of settle us and get us ready, I'm just going to ask, what's your favorite dessert, and if you play a role in creating it, or if you're just the bakery down the street is doing it. So we'll start with you, Megan, after you take a bite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can't choose between ice cream because everything should have ice cream. And I do make ice cream, but you can buy really good ice cream too. And everything in the world of ice cream, gelato, any of that, I'm happy with. And then I really like creme brulee too. And I make a dang good creme brulee, especially espresso flavored creme brulee.
Pretty sure you have to bring some.
I'm happy to share. Yeah.
Red velvet cake with cream cheese frosting from scratch.
Wow,
The recipe is from the 1900s.
nice.
Passed down.
Is it the Oscar Waldorf cake?
No, it's better.
Wow.
It's better.
Chocolate chip cookies with brown butter. And then you do like 3 different types of chocolate chips. You get your milk, oh my gosh, words are hard. Milk, some semi-sweet and dark.
Oh,
And they're all different chunks and sizes. Yeah,
so it sounds like you make that.
I do.
Okay,
delicious.
all right. I think there's some work for an upcoming board meeting. How about you, Don?
I like cheesecake.
Cheesecake, and do you make it? Or do you?
No, typically I don't.
Is there a favorite location that provides the best?
No, I just like
Anybody?
it.
Cheesecake Factory.
Philadelphia or New York?
I don't. Makes no difference. I
So
like,
like, is it baked or is it chilled?
I like both.
They're so easy.
We'll just keep going around. And Lisa, I have not met you yet.
Dessert. Thank you. Anything chocolate with coffee related would work for me.
Raul.
A new favorite, since I just came back from a trip, a soft serve matcha on a cone. And it's made by Tokyo Matcha. That's the place. I mean, I literally went there every day when I was on a trip.
Have you been to that place over by Trader Joe's?
No.
They make it there.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and on a matcha, with a matcha cone.
Okay.
Don't tell them that. Our lunch breaks aren't that long. Banana bread with chocolate chips.
Okay.
Not if you do it right.
Yeah, in keeping with the season of opening night, baseball nut ice cream by Ben & Jerry's. Mic drop.
Okay, well, thank you.
Sandy, what's your favorite?
Oh, what's my favorite? Yeah, I'm with the chocolate chip cookie, although I'm now of an age where I can't eat it in the evening. So that's a midday dessert for me.
That's an all-day dessert.
No, it's bad. Anyway, but that happens at a certain point in life. All right, we won't embarrass our listeners with me divulging too much. Here, so, okay, so we're gonna start this evening by talking about budget. This is not a fun conversation. This is heartbreaking that what we're having to do. And by the way, you're not alone. There are hundreds of districts in this state that are going through the same thing or have just gone through the same thing. I am, for those of you listening at home, I'm from the North Shore School District. Over the last 3 years, we have cut $50 million out of our budget, and we are just slightly smaller than Kent. So this is catastrophic, what is happening to our students in this state. But it is required by law that you put together a balanced budget every year. So we're going to talk about your role from now until June 24th, because that's when you vote on it. And we're going to review the work that you have done already to get to the budget to this point. Rahul's going to do a presentation, mostly why boards receive a presentation on the budget at this point of the year is so they can fill you in on what the state legislature has done or not done in our case that may have changed the budget projections. Otherwise, it's baked at this point. There is nothing left that will change between April and June. Your enrollment projections are not going to change dramatically. There is no other money sources coming in. If you were going to run a bond and levy, even if you ran it this year, you don't get to start collecting it till next year. So this is it. Everything is there. So that's why we talked about desserts, because we are baked at this point. You don't get to add ingredients into it. It's in the oven. It is cooking. And it's almost ready to come out and start cooling for you to vote on June 24th. So what we're going to talk about is your role in getting the community prepared and understanding of what's happening between now and June 24th when you are voting on it. So we're going to start with the Washington State Board Standards, and specifically Standard 3. That talks about your role around budgeting. It's for those of you viewing at home. It's also on your screen. And so these are, and we're going to talk later in our evening about your board self-assessment. And this is one of the things you're going to be assessing yourself on. So that's why we're going to start there. Then we're going to talk about your strategic plan. And because as you can see, it's important that your budget is in alignment with your strategic plan. And then we're going to finish with the budget priorities that you set last fall, instructed staff to use those budget priorities in the work. So I'm going to give you a minute to just read through. There are 5 indicators for evaluation on the budget, and then we'll have a conversation around that and where we're at.
Is there a reason why this wasn't shared with the board beforehand?
Because I just put it together. I was trying to create the framework. First of all, you've all had your strategic plan forever, and you had your budget indicators last October.
But we had no idea what was going to be discussed here. Like, I didn't even know we were going to be discussing the budget.
The agenda was published
We talked
Friday.
about, yeah, we've also talked about for over a month that we were going to have budget as part of the board retreat.
Would have been nice to have more documentation. Thank you.
We might have talked about it at the end of the board meeting that you left early.
And I believe,
Board report, and that should not be done. So I don't know why that would have been done. But thank you.
yeah, so I know that this agenda was published at 11:59 on Friday because I had some things going on my own and I was kind of scrambling, trying to multitask. So this has been published to the community and board members as of Friday night at 11:59 p.m. So, okay, so I apologize, but that's why we're going to take a minute to read through these 5 indicators. There's, again, this is a Washington State School Director Association standards. All board members have received these. This is not new information for you, but it's just an opportunity to kind of narrow your focus.
So this document's in the WASDA guide. right?
It is absolutely in the
knew I'd seen
WASDA
it before.
guide,
It's in
yes.
Page 21, in fact.
Oh,
Yes.
look at that, okay, thank you.
Yes, and when you do your board training in the fall, you received this. This is all information. This is not, there's nothing new. I'm not handing out anything that is brand new to anybody.
No.
Okay, so again, let's just take a minute to read through these 5 indicators for evaluation. I love Laura with the good highlighter. A good
Teacher.
highlighter, yep, multicolored highlighter. Okay, so thoughts after reading these? Again, framing it within your work as a Kent board member. I know some of you came in after we were several months into this work, but just as you're reading that, thoughts about this is my, because again, this is your role in the budget process, right? So thoughts about what you've just read so far.
Well, it always concerns me when it says reasonable ending fund balance, because to different people, it means different things, like what does that look like? And so we have a board policy on what that needs to be, and being able to tie some of these back to board policies that keep us in alignment to make sure that people know what a reasonable fund balance is, right? So we all have the same expectation versus, because if you just read that, my ending fund balance is a different number than everybody else probably, right? I want it higher or lower. So I like the fact that this is tied into our board policies that gives us the number that goes with this.
Yes, and that the ending fund balance has become a new topic of conversation. And we're going to revisit that when we get into the communication plan that you guys are going to talk about as a board, how you're going to communicate this out. It was something we discussed forever ago in our district, belief that it was too high. We worked with our labor partners. And again, you want the money in the classroom. The money comes in from your taxpayers, you want it in the classroom. Why does there need to be money in an ending fund balance? And then since our district had that conversation 15, 16 years ago, the state changed the allotment schedule. And nod your head if you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, this is important to understand. So instead of receiving 1/12 of your money each month, in 2000, I think it was 2011, please fact correct me, but it was right around then, the state changed it in a budget gimmick of their own. So they moved the money that we would receive in April and May and June to the next fiscal year. So to balance their own budget. And not all of it, but they reduced the amount that we receive in the spring, and then they front-loaded it. So now you get a much larger than that 1/12 percentage in July and August, but a smaller amount in May and June. Well, our staff still would like to be paid in May and June. And so that's what the ending fund balance has always been used for, is to get you through the months of May and June. You would take the money out of the ending fund balance, you would pay your staff, and then when the money comes in July and August, you put it back in for the next year, because they have not undone this. It was a one-time gimmick that they used, but they never fixed it. Well, and that works great when you have an ending fund balance. Now, in our district, North Shore, and many districts around the state, when you had to dip into your ending fund balance to balance your budget, it got down to 0, and in our case, it went below 0, and we had to borrow money to get ourselves through May and June, so our staff could be paid like they want to be, and deserve to be. And so you can borrow money from your capital fund, and larger districts like North Shore and Kent have capital funds. We have capital budgets and you can borrow it, but you still have to pay the interest on it. So we were having to borrow $5-10 million to get us through. The interest works out to be about $100,000. And so I have, at this point, framed everything in terms of staff. So I have explained to our community, that's a teacher that we cannot hire because we have to pay interest on money to borrow. And that's why you need an ending fund balance. That's why you need to have money in the bank. And it's frustrating to see that $15, $20, $30 million sitting there and feel like I want that in the classroom now. But that's why you have to have that money in there, is to be able to get you through those months of May and June, so that you don't have to borrow money, because that will cost you a teacher, essentially. So that's the reason why that's all of a sudden become such a hot topic. And by the way, this session, they were talking about doing that again. Taking money from March and April and moving it to July and August.
What kind of advocacy is WASDA and other education advocates doing to change this policy?
We have tried, and we've been told it's a non-starter.
By who?
By the state legislature, because they will have to take money out of the current budget, right? So they would have, and so it just, when they are in a budget crisis themselves, they are not interested in doing anything that's going to cost them money.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. But that's why we advocated very strongly against them doing it with the months of March and April, because that was something that was being tossed around, and we kind of lost our minds. Said, no, thank you. That's not going to happen. Okay, so that just says everybody have context of why the ending fund balance is so important, and why that's the definition that's currently being used for reasonable, is to make sure that we can get through those couple of months where we're not receiving our full state allotment.
So is it, would it be correct to understand this as when you're done with June or what have you, or whatever month this is supposed to get us through, you should be close to 0? Because that would mean that you're planning properly and you're not holding on to excess funds, and you're planning to get that money that you're going to get at the beginning of the year again. And so the end of each year, you're planning to get near to-ish 0, not this is a rainy day fund for later.
Yeah, and that's the conversation. So for us in our district, 0 is, ooh, that's a little stressful for me as a board member, just because I've seen enough, the asbestos that was found in a windowsill of a school, or a pandemic, and all of a sudden we had to purchase this PPE on the black market practically. No, we didn't buy anything on the black market, but it felt like it, right? So there's just enough uncertainty in this world. I call the term I've just heard recently is polycrisis. We're in an era of polycrisis. So 0 would make me very uncomfortable, because that doesn't give you any wiggle room for a massive ice storm that causes pipes to burst. And you're trying to get classrooms to be safe and not covered with mold, so that our teachers and students can be in them. So you just, and that comfort level, that's going to vary from board member to board member, and that's where that word reasonable comes in.
So then its purpose isn't what you were saying.
No, it's all
different.
of the above, right? It
Okay.
is your ending fund balance is that money, and rainy day fund also includes changes the state legislature makes that costs us money. Now, so you don't want to be sitting on $100 million, absolutely. And that, again, that's that reasonable, that you guys have to have that conversation of where is that at. But I would not recommend ending at 0.
Well, I didn't mean that. I just meant that the way that it was, the way I was understanding what you were saying is that the purpose of the ending fund balance didn't begin until we went away from monthly amounts. And if that's the case, then you were always going to be roughly at 0. You'd want to have some amount, but if that were the case, we wouldn't be creating this ending fund balance without it being the sole purpose, right?
Right.
And so if we're creating this ending fund balance for a different purpose, then that lead up doesn't match. So
Okay,
that's where I'm getting at, because there was no
I'm
discussion about any other purpose of it, and that's
Yeah,
why.
no, it was created way long before, and it is just a best practice in private companies, nonprofits, government entities, that there is always some amount for emergencies. The label we put on it is ending fund balance.
And what's the typical ending fund balance that's outside of the amount that we are planning for due to the legislature's inability to balance their own budget?
Right, so, yeah, so ours is 3%. That's a little on the low side. Again, there's so many layers and components up to this that you're gonna lose your community if you get into Moody's and Poor's and you're, getting downgraded in your ratings because your ending fund balance is too low, and then that costs you money, right? But you can explain the importance of an ending fund balance to your community when you say it costs us money if we can't get through these couple of months, if we don't have enough money to use from that, right? So that is why it's become, and it's not that it wasn't important before. We've always had to have an ending fund balance. And again, that's just best practices for all entities, that you have some money in the bank for whatever is happening. But it has highlighted since this change by the state legislature why that's become important. And it really wasn't an issue because we had McCleary, we had money coming in, and so people were fine. In fact, there was even a point where the state legislature was looking into our ending fund balances to use it to justify reducing how much they were giving us. It's a fun thing. But at this point in time, that has become an important explanation to our communities of why we have to have some money in there. And again, reasonable is a conversation, but we have to be able to get through May and June.
And that 3%, is that inclusive of the May and June situation as well as the rest of what you have needed for other expenditures that might come up?
Right, so that's the unreserved ending fund balance and then there's all the other things that are in reserve. So the 3% is the unreserved.
I see. Sorry, but we just discussed raising it to 8% or something before. So that's why I ask, because that's closing in on 3 times as much as what your own district is doing.
Yeah, and that, again, that's the conversation you have to have as a board. Where's our comfort level? But we're talking about today, we're going to talk about the budget. There is a very logical urge to get that ending fund balance down to 0. Because you're like, it's an emergency, we don't want to cut this money, we don't want to be laying people off, we don't want to be hurting students and staff. And so having this, that was an aha for us in our district of, but it costs us money to take the ending fund balance down to 0 every year, and so that's why we can't do it, and that's why we've got to have this money. And that helped everybody kind of like, it's a really boring topic, but I can see why that makes a difference.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, other thoughts on these 5 standards? Or five sub-points of one standard.
So our board had passed a few years ago something that required a committee of sorts to meet about the budget that included the community as well as, it was supposed to have the board as well, and staff members, I would imagine. That doesn't seem to have been done. Is that something, like, I know the board found purpose in before, it was never disbanded as far as I'm aware. I also believe it's somewhat mandatory, as it's something that's in our policies. How do we end up resolving something like that. I do believe that, having additional viewpoints from our community members, as well as, our staff working with our board in conjunction all together, can lead to better outcomes. And so how would we go about resolving something like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. It is something we are clarifying in our own district, because, and I'm not going to focus just on the fiscal committee. We do have one. That is a very logical, and I would argue a good practice. We have a gazillion task forces and committees and caucus groups. There's so many. And doing an audit by your board of all of your committees and task forces and whatever you're calling them, and see what all do we have, because that's where we've had to start. How many of these things are there? What is happening with any of them? What is their charter? I'm working with another district where I'm like, just get the charter for all of your committees to see what the charter was. Are they committees of the board? Are they committees of the superintendent? Because those are two very different things. Do they have a timeline? Are they in perpetuity, right? So that's what I would recommend that you start with, is an audit of your entire committee structure in your district to see where they're at, what their directive is. Because, yeah, and that's where we're at in our district. Is we have a brand new superintendent. He's like, what is happening here? I'm like, yeah. And then once you've got clarity, we've just started, and I might have had a little meltdown of, I need to be getting the minutes from all of these committees so that I can see what's happening, because you don't want to be attending any of those, by the way. If any of you are attending any of your committees, please stop, because there's a whole lot to it. But that's where I would recommend starting to get a sense of what all is out there, and then you can start cleaning it up and getting them to be, because, yeah, fiscal committees, we have an enrollment demographics task force committee, we have a curriculum committee. They can be powerful partners with you in this work and really help guide you and give you good ideas, as well as be great communicators. So they can, I love our committees, but they, over time, can get messy and lacking in clarity as to their purpose and what they're doing.
Yeah, I guess the reason I ask is because I don't know that I've ever seen any report from any committee that we've had, so I'm just curious where those might be.
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, I think that's a good step. Maybe we even do some work with that in our June retreat, is an audit of all the committees. Because yeah, when you come in as a new board member, you're like, wait, we have a what? Who? Yeah. We've got a highly capable task force that we just learned is actually not a district task force. It's outside of the district. So yeah, so it's those kind of moments of like, oh, that is super helpful to know that that's not even something we have any control over.
Nope, not gonna touch it, never mind.
Yeah, so yeah, it just is good to get an understanding of what all is out there, because names can be added to groups that form, and you could be in belief that it's actually something that was instigated by the board or the district, and then find out that they're not actually part of the district, and then you have no control, and that may be why you don't get it. Not that that's what happened with that, but so that's a really good thing to do, is to take some time and get that clarified. Any other thoughts on these standards, just in terms of grounding you, the role that has been played by the board to get you to this point of April 1st for the 26-27 budget?
This is gonna sound like a dummy question, but since we went over like definition of reasonable ending fund balance, do we have a definition for fiscally responsible?
I would say, for me, fiscally responsible means that you're balanced, your budget is balanced, and that it is, because you have to create this 4-year plan. Again, that was some fun thing that the state created, which is really great fun because you can't predict what they're going to fund you. But, anyway, that it has the projection over the next couple of years to stay balanced, right? That you haven't you haven't done hiring of staff, you haven't taken on situations that, all other things being equal, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, that you're going to be in a world apart. So that's part of the fiscally responsible, it's more than just this year of balancing your budget. And that's not a dummy question at all. Because you can be held liable for not being fiscally responsible. So that's a little stressor there for board members.
If I may, Sandy, so there's much more than fiscal, than just the end. And auditors often will ask about, what did you do when you found out? So it's really about a longer period of time that districts are looked at, not just the ending fund balance. And that's the way they will move ahead with ratings and things like that. So I just wanted to note that.
Yep. Yeah, making sure that you've got clean audits from the state auditor's office, that's all part of that, right? And if they do find something, that there is follow-up and that you as the board are being informed of what's being done to rectify whatever the situation is.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've added a lot more meetings this year about the budget, and I believe it's been on every informational monthly. Without looking at all of them, I cannot confirm, but it is my belief that every month that the board has that available. And but we intentionally put the budget much more front and center this school year.
And that unfortunately happens in a period of cuts. Yes, I was going through, as I was preparing for this, I was going through what we did in 23, 24, and 24, 25. And it was like 15 meetings that we had on budget. Yes, not so many once you get to balanced. It's kind of nice to back off of that. Like, oh, the budget is balanced. Okay. No new money, but yeah. Okay. I always carry my own strategic plan with me everywhere I go. So I'm hoping that you also have your own personal copy of your strategic plan. This is the big picture of how budgets work. And when I work with boards, when I work with my own board, this is your input into the budget, is your strategic plan. Because what you fund, right, is reflective of what you have told everyone is important. So that and that's for your community, for your staff, for the board. This is where you weigh in on the budget. And then staff is like, okay, you've said that math instruction is important. We're going to make sure that we're doing math instruction. Graduation rates are important. We're going to make sure that we're funding 6 period day. I laugh because not fully funded by the state. So we are going to put more money to make sure that we have a 6 period day so that we can meet graduation. We are going to fund resources for students that are not on track to graduate so they can make up courses, et cetera, et cetera. That's your role. That's how you play a role in the budget process. Okay. So I'm not going to belabor this, but just wanted to make sure that you understood. This is where your voice is. And then finally, and we did this in January, and got a thumbs up from everybody that you were still in agreement. Oh, look at you. You came. You brought yours from what? Did you bring that?
I brought it.
Oh, my goodness, Teresa. You get a gold star.
It's in my folder.
You get a gold star. So these are the priorities that you put together last fall when Amy was here. And I'm chuckling because the original draft of the agenda had Amy's name on it, and we are very much interchangeable. That happens all the time. Our superintendent will even so President Cast. I'm like, nope, that was last time. So these are the guiding principles that you guys put together last fall. I know, Laura, you weren't here, but.
Oh, but I was.
Oh, but you were.
She was
Right
over
there.
there.
Okay. And we got a thumbs up that in January that these were still the guiding principles for the 26-27 budget. Staff has gone off and used those as they've created their budget. So,
If I may, just one thing.
yes.
I think we decided as a board that it was not
Number.
in preference order. It just is in so you can say, I'm talking about number 6.
Right.
And so it's an identification, not in a preference.
Okay,
They're
that's
all
a good
important.
reminder. Thank you. Right, so that, yeah, right, because there's one about complying with law, which is kind of like, yeah, we don't really have to do that. So again, just a reminder, this is what you've sent staff off with. Again, this is where you had a role in the budget process. You created these guidelines, these principles, bowling lane bumpers, as I like to call them. You can't go outside of this. So this was where you played a role in the budget process. So just creating context here. And I'm going to turn it over to Raul now to bring you up to speed what happened with our legislature, how they did not help us, so we say.
As we are bringing the presentation up, I'd just like to share that what you're going to see tonight. Oh, by the way, good evening, President Margell, member of the boards, and Superintendent Vela, Ms. Curry. So what you're going to see tonight is a similar presentation that was on the agenda for February 25th and later was postponed. And so this is a similar presentation, but we've updated some of the pages because of the new information that we gathered specifically that night. And so we listened and we included some of them here in this presentation. And tonight we will also provide you with some of the legislative update resulting from the session, the 60-day session. And so I'm not going to be repeating. I'm not going to provide you with 52 slides tonight, unlike on February 4th. But some of the slides you might see familiar. And so we're going to just jump right into the general fund forecast assumptions. We do this in order for us to determine if there's any budget gaps. If we were to do the forecast and assume that there are no changes in the expenditures, our goal is to determine, according to the budget priorities or the budget principles, it says we need to measure whether we could keep all the services. And actually that's what this is if we don't make any changes to our expenditures outside of the collectively bargained adjustments, what would it look like? What would our budget look like? Will there be any budget gaps? Those are the things that we are trying to test. But if you will actually look at the 26-27 column here, you will see that most of our bargaining units have settled their agreement with the district, with the exception of one, KSFSA, which is our nutrition services staff. And if you were to quantify all the salary increases or salary adjustments that has been settled, the total amount of that would be about $16 million. And I just want you to remember that because as we move into the projection, that will become very relevant. One of the other things that is a little changed from our last presentation is the last line, which is the EP&O levy. You know that our levy is going to be expiring on December 31, 2027. And in 26-27, we had this information before, and we say that we're going to be going into the February 9 special election to renew or to adjust our levy. Well, this time we're considering going into the midterm election in November of 2026. And it will give us a little bit more opportunity in case we needed, to use another election. So say if we fail the first one, we could go into the special election again in February. So November 2026, which is the midterm, tends to have more participation in the election. And so we think that we have a good chance on that election.
Remind me, do we need a supermajority in order for this to pass, or is it just a simple?
Simple.
Wonderful.
So resulting from all this assumption is the next slide. Again, this is not the first time you've seen this. In the current year, 25-26, you will see that we're projecting a 22.8 million deficit. But in 26-27 and all the way to 28-29, we're still projecting a continuous deficit in our budget. But I'd like for you to take a closer look at the expenditure between 25-26 and 26-27. And if you look at the difference between the two, you notice that the expenditure is actually increasing by about $18.5 million. 16 million of that are salary increases. And so there's approximately 2.5 million left for other areas of the budget like the MSOC, insurance, and things like that.
And I want to clarify, are you getting the salary increase from the very first page that we talked about where it's according to the contracts that we've already signed?
Yes.
So you're projecting that additional money for the expenditures because the first slide tells me, hey, we're going to increase salaries for KPA, and this is the amount, and that's how you're calculating that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any agreement that has been settled, we've incorporated them into our calculation. Thus, in the 18.5 million increase in expenditure, 16 of that was salary increases.
Okay.
And so, if you look at what's left, there's about 2.5 million left for other things in the budget. And later on in the legislative update, you will see that we needed those 2.5 and maybe more because we're not seeing any adjustment on the MSOC and special ed and transportation. And so with this assumption, you see that there's a budget gap. And all the way to 28-29, you see that if we don't make any change in our expenditure and we continue to incorporate all the salary increases in the future, our budget, our fund balance will go as low as negative 92.1 million. And we know we're not going to leave it there. We need to rectify this. We need to figure out.
Could you clarify, is that the ending fund balance as calculated in August or at the lowest point it would be at any time during the year?
No, this would be at the end of the year,
year.
not any part of the year.
Okay,
In June?
In August.
in August?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Are there times during the year where it'd go even lower than that?
Yes.
Okay, and how much
Yes.
lower would it go than that?
Well, typically it happens in the month of February and March when we run our monthly financial statement. And when you look at it on a month-by-month basis, even though our projection is 92.1, it can go as high as over 100 million when we looked at it in terms of monthly. Now, the board policy 6022, states that we measure our ending fund balance after the F-196 is submitted. And so F-196 gets submitted on the first week of November for the prior fiscal year. And so this is the reason why when we measure the ending fund balance, it means end of the year in August. That's end of the year in August. However, your point is taken where during the month when we submit to you the financial statement, there will be times where it's bigger than that number. But in the month
The deficit is bigger.
the deficit is bigger. And in the month of April, that's when we get the big property tax and it starts to recover.
And so I guess the one thing I would ask is, can we see what that fund balance is? As, Director Cook, we talked about that the fund balance is for different things, right? Both paying our employees and emergencies that come up. You don't get to choose when an emergency comes. And so I would be interested in seeing where that fund balance is throughout the year.
Yes, and we do have all those information. I think we need to compile them in a different spreadsheet, but from the monthly financial statement that we submit every month, you will be able to see them on page 3 of the document, or page 4 of the document. It's there, so.
So we,
I guess the projected, looking
Yes.
forward, what that would look like,
Yeah.
yeah.
we actually receive that every month
Yes.
in our monthly.
I'm sure after paying $100,000 in interest, you'd want to know that.
Well, we get, it's funny, we have like a 30-page document of our monthly budget, and, based on where
We have the
the
same.
world is at, is what we pay attention to. We've been very fixated on the projected annual ending fund balance. But we get that updated every month of what it's projected to be by the end of the year. And we watch for it to, please don't go below zero.
And, yeah, and we do the same. We
Yeah.
update our forecast on a monthly basis based on new information that we get.
Yeah, so that certainly is something that the board could receive as well.
Yeah. So we know we don't want to stay at this level. And so now that we know that there's a budget gap, the question is, what would it take to rectify the budget cuts? And so this is what you're going to see on the next slide, is that in order for us to be able to maintain a minimum, again, I want to say a minimum of 5%, which is the board policy, we need to make budget cuts of about 30.5 million in 26-27, and an additional 9.5 million on both years in 27-28 and 28-29 on top of each other. And you will see that if we do that, we are able to maintain a 5% minimum unassigned ending fund balance. Like what Sandy said earlier, probably not a good idea to stay at 5% because this is the time when you may incur emergency unplanned expenses, and somewhere down the road, you might fall below 5% if you don't put a little cushion on it. And some of the examples of that, like facilities, emergencies, there are also a possibility that you get additional IEPs that requires more services. And similar cases, pandemic is another example where nobody prepared for it, and then you need to buy extra PPE for those times. And so,
Can you explain a little bit about why the amount that we need at 5% is a 66% increase over the amount that North Shore needs? Because if they're at 3% and you were to add 2 additional percent, that's 66% more than what they're doing at their district. So it seems like a pretty stark increase in comparison, and consider especially the difference between our districts being fairly minimal.
Yeah, it's a board decision. It was a decision we made in 2010 because that was the last time we were in budget cuts, and the state was really hammering us financially, and so that we had discussions with our labor partners.
I did.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
fine. You
it's
guys
just-
decided how you do it. I'm just wondering what the reasoning is on our side.
It was a board decision.
yes.
I understand.
So I don't know and when that was made. in the
Yeah,
end.
that board policy's been around quite a while, so boards actually, we've been working with the 5% for as far as I can remember.
We moved it down a few years ago.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
can tell you it makes our current CFO very, she is not wild about our 3%. But that's a healthy conversation to have. I don't recommend having these kind of conversations in the middle of a crisis because it gets political really fast. But I think once you've got a balanced budget and you're not making cuts, then it is a conversation worth having of what it is, especially if it's been a decade or so since it was set. What is a healthy fund balance and what is that percentage? Look at Moody and Ford's and standards and take all that information. Look at other neighboring districts to see.
So during a crisis like we're dealing with at this point, be a good time for you to increase your ending fund balance requirement?
I really don't recommend making major changes in the middle of a crisis, and I don't want
I
to
see.
weigh in on that. I think,
Okay.
again, that's a conversation. I would look at neighboring districts. I know we're one of the lowest for a large district in the state, and so that's why I'm not advocating for that. But look and see what other, again, get through this, get to a place where you're not making cuts, your budget is balanced for several years, and then revisit that conversation. And again, look at what other districts are doing, where you're gonna run into trouble with Moody and Ford's and standards and all those people where if they downgrade you, then you get to pay more money in interest for your bonds.
Thank you.
So, so now that we know what the budget gaps are, and we know the year by year, and it's, just to be able to meet the minimum ending fund balance, we're gonna go into now, how do we balance this? We know what the amount is, but what are the things that we do to be able to balance the budget? And so in the process of doing that, we put the students at the forefront of everything. But you see on both sides of the coin, we have to really do a lot of balancing act. One of the things in the budgeting factors are inadequate state and federal funding. We have increasing cost of operation, the compliance with federal and state, collective bargaining agreements, declining enrollment, student access, technology access, student staff safety, and facilities maintenance. Well, on the flip side of that, we also want to make sure that we are fiscally solvent. We would like to be, like we mentioned earlier, fiscally responsible. We want stability in our district, because if we're not stable, we're focusing our attention mainly on balancing the budget rather than educating our children. And then sustainability. Can we sustain, when we make decisions, can we really sustain this over a period of time? And that's why forecast is very important. We incorporate whatever decision we make today and see if it would be sustained over the next 4 years. If not, then we need to make different decisions. And so what we've done as part of the process is we've done engagement with our community, and we provided a lot of communications. I'm not going to read through all of them, but in a nutshell, many of them were meeting with our labor partners. We have met with students. We've done board work session. We've created web pages for the community to be able to access and provide input, and starting in October and all the way to March. We have done, the engagement by the superintendent with the community. We have the budget feedback survey, and that survey result was presented on February 25th also. So we've set parameters in terms of how are we going to do this? How are we going to, at what areas of the district we're going to make some cuts? And so here is the information that we have presented in the past in terms of the general category, building supports, categorical program, central office, all the way to the program adjustment. This is the ranges that we came up with. What you're going to see next are where are we at in all this category. And so when you look at the building supports, we set 4 to 4.5 million as a range. As of today, we have come up with $2.45 million, and those are the breakdown by employee groups. In categorical programs, we came up with about $3.7 million identified as cuts on a 3 to 3.5 million goal.
Right.
In central office, we come up with 1.9 million so far on a 2.5 to 3 million target. In class size, we set 11 to 12 million, but today we have about 86.5 FTE classroom teachers for a total of about 9.95 million. In MSOC, we set about 1 million to 2 million. Currently, we have about 981,000. Operations, 1.5 to 2 million. Currently, we have 1.6 million identified. And program adjustments set at 7 to 8 million and currently identified at $10.7 million. And so when you look at how we compare to our ranges, there's a total of about 31.3 million identified so far. Some of them are above the range, some of them are below the range. And that's why this is still in progress, because we're still making adjustments almost on a daily basis. This slide right here is just to provide comparison in terms of what is the share of each employee group in the current year. And so as an example, when you look at KEA, there is a total of 1,873 FTE, which is about 62.2% of all the employee in the district. And you look at CAP, 416 FTE at about 13.8%, and so on and so forth. Now, when you look at the budget cuts to date, this is how it looks like in terms of employee group. You notice KEA is 62.1, which is almost identical to their share of the bargaining unit. What you notice the big difference right here is on CAP, which is currently at 13.8, but their share of the cuts at this time is about 22.8%. And so all of them, you see all the differences. The point of this slide is to be able to give you some information in terms of how each bargaining unit, what is their share of the cuts so far.
Why is CAP being hit so much harder?
We currently have a lot of paraeducators in our special ed program, and so what we did was we evaluate, some of the language on the collective bargaining agreement to make sure that, number one, we comply with the CBA, but at the same time to bring in some efficiencies in our operation. And so that is the result of that.
What about KOP? I see that they've been literally cut in half.
KOP
7.5
is
versus 2.3.
I think the opposite.
2.3% over a 7.4. Their share is 7.4. They got cut 2.3%.
Oh,
So
my
that's-
apologies, I'm reading it backwards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, just curious, what level of community involvement have we had in making the decisions of where cuts should be? And also, how their priorities are, especially given the fact that they're the ones that are gonna be deciding our future with these levies and such.
So the priorities would be the board's priorities, which were principles. Those are the ones that my team followed. So that's what I applied for where the cuts are. So
So you didn't talk to the community at all?
we did have, you just stepped out, we talked about the engagement that we've had with community, with surveys and things like that.
Did we have any committees?
Committee as in what?
Any group that's come in here to sit in a longer-term discussion type format to be able to give their ideas, then go back to, the drawing board with us, and then come back to them so that they can then give adjustments to what they think, and then kind of make it a more collaborative involvement of them?
We met with labor groups who were impacted as we shared. We started in October of last year, this year. So with labor groups, we've been sharing with them periodically what's happening. And there are certain ones that we did talk to and work
So
to.
no
Those are the
community
impacted.
committees, though?
It may be a helpful framing that we used in ours, that the cuts are from what you're not legally required to do, right? And it's still a horrible list. But there are things that you're legally required to do, and you cannot cut, like things that are in contracts. So most of those are contract, and the community has no say in the contracts, right? Those are negotiated.
I wouldn't expect that they would, but I
Yeah,
would
so,
expect that
and
they
that's
would have.
85% of your budget.
But I would assume that they might have some ideas, that they might also want to be heard.
Right, and that's that 15% of the budget that is
I'm sorry.
where you are allowed to make cuts. That's not, you don't have to reopen bargaining, and it does sound like you did that with your, yes.
Well, and there's the online dashboard too.
Yeah.
So
So there,
are you talking about where community can submit information? Director Williams, I'm talking.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were talking to Dawn.
No.
Yeah, I'm talking about don't we have an online dashboard where community can submit ideas and suggestions?
An online email.
Yes, sorry, dashboard, I just wasn't sure if you meant by dashboard. I know it's an email that they can submit.
Yeah. There is an email address where they could submit questions, comments, and suggestions and things like that.
I just think it's gonna bite us in the butt if we do not include the community on every step of the way from now until November when we're asking them for money.
so, yes, and we're gonna talk about how you're gonna communicate and get in front of them and explain what's happened. It is a balancing act of communicating with your community, getting their input. You don't wanna say, what would you like us to cut? That is a nightmare question to ask. Because they're gonna volunteer things that either you can't cut Or it's the neighbor kid's problem and not my child that's hurt, right? So and that's what this was all about, is those guiding, what is important to our community. And then you've done surveying and it's reflective. So this is the community involvement, is your guiding principles. This is the community involvement, your strategic plan. That's how the community is involved. They're not, they don't want to be at the point of, do we eliminate line 33 of the F-195 budget? That's not their role. That's staff's role. You're overseeing, are you in alignment with the strategic plan? Are you in alignment with our guiding principles that we, the board, have set as the community liaisons? So, and then we're going to talk about how you're going to be out there, because you are absolutely right. There is a vast majority of your district, I promise you, 95%, that has no idea this is coming. And so your next steps after we get through this is going to be talking about how are you going to explain what's happened, why this is happening, and what you're doing to get through to a balanced budget, and how you're going to reassure them that you're still educating their kids. Things are going to look a little different, but third grade's still happening. Anyway, we're going to talk about that in a minute. So hold that thought about how, because you're absolutely right. And there are 195 districts that have had to go through this very thing, and then you had to go back out and ask for an EP&O levy, and a bond, and a technology levy, and a capital levy, and all those things. And there is a way to communicate this, because most of our EP&O levies passed in the state after all these districts did budget cuts. So we're going to talk about that in a minute, of how we're going to do this, so that, because you are right to be concerned about this. Okay.
So switching into the 2026 legislative session. So the legislative session concluded on March 12, which was a 60-day session. It's short than the previous one. The budget was delivered to the governor for signature, which is, by the way, due today. I don't know if you've seen any, but up until 4 o'clock today, I've not seen any
hasn't signed it yet.
sign that he signed the document. The budget is $80.2 billion, which is an increase from a $77.9 billion enacted in 2025. Mainly $1.7 billion in maintenance level and about $0.6 billion in new policies. The state is using, this is a key factor in terms of how to look at the future, is that the state is using $2.3 billion from their unrestricted reserve to balance their budget, including about $880 million from the rainy day fund. And so that's alarming because, as you know, that the reserve is one-time money. And if you're using one-time money to balance a ongoing expenditure, pretty soon you're going to run out of money and see what happens. And so if we want to look at the outlook, what it's going to be like in 27, 28, and beyond, that would be alarming, what our budget would look like. Now, the K-12 public education budget summary, that is a link, which we provided you that information from WASDA. But in a nutshell, they shared that in K-12, there was an addition of about 13.6 million, but a reduction of 94.3 million, all of which were detailed in the WASDA report. A net reduction of about 80.7 million overall in K-12 budget.
And
Now-
what kind of percentage does that equate to? So if we're talking $80.7 million, like, that's a large number to me personally. I don't have $80.7 million to give to anything. But $80.7 million as part of half of the entire state's budget, which is close to where we're at, we're talking what kind of percent? That's 0.001%? Where are we at?
Yeah, I didn't do the math, but I'd be happy to do that so maybe
Okay,
we
I can look it
could
up.
do it. So if
I
our
think
share of the
probably
budget is about
more would be
42%.
195 districts'
Yeah.
share of 80 million.
200.
That- 200, sorry. Yeah.
But, yeah, but I think the next slide will, you'll see what it means to us.
Before we're talking about that, a reduction as part of the communication, we still are not amply funded for K-12 education. So it isn't like if we had the $80 million that would solve our district issues, as you know, around special ed, MSOC, and transportation, just to name a few. I just wanted to point that out.
Well, but in further analyzing what the education budget looks like and what it means to us here in KSD, these are some of the things that we picked up. So, sales tax exemption on services, that is a relief of approximately about $1 million for our district. I wouldn't call them a benefit, just because it was a burden in the first place, and it's eliminated. The burden is eliminated. That's why I call them a relief of about $1 million, something that we don't need to pay any longer. The discussion right now is does this take effect starting on April 1st or on July 1st? And so that is still a contention at this time. We would like this to take effect on April 1st, but we'll wait and see.
Is the $1 million estimate, though, that's for next year's school year?
For the next school year.
Yeah.
The bus depreciation, in further discussion with our Director of Transportation, he explained that, well, basically the bus depreciation is increasing the depreciation of our smaller bus from 8 years to 10 years, and the bigger bus from 13 years to 15 years. Well, I consulted with our Director of Transportation, and he said it really has minimal impact to zero on us, just because we use our buses longer than that. And so we're going to continue to receive our funding, but our buses are going to be used beyond the useful life that is established by the state. In terms of running start, it would be more of an impact to the students. There would be less option for them. Basically what they're saying is we could only claim up to a maximum of 1.3 FTE versus a 1.4 previously. Well, what would happen is the student now could enroll fewer classes in Running Start, which means less option for them. But in terms of financial impact, the money is a pass-through from the state to us to the college. And so there's really no fiscal impact on us, more impact on the students. On the positive note, we were hoping that because there's less option for Running Start, they would start coming back into our comprehensive high school, and hopefully our enrollment at the comprehensive high school would go up because of this. The beginning education support team, which is BEST program, we preliminarily estimated that to show a 20% reduction in funding. Again, it's preliminary because we're still trying to confirm what our funding would look like. We have to apply for it. And what we're seeing is approximately about 20% reduction. But I think the key element of this program is that it's now limited to first-year teacher only. It used to be first, second, and third, but now it's first-year teacher only. The transition to kindergarten, we don't.
Can you go back to that? Sorry.
Sure.
So it's a 20% estimate, but it's reducing it by 66%.
20% reduction, not 66.
Okay, so because we did have it for 3 years, now we only have it for one. So that's a 66% reduction, right?
By years, yes.
By years.
Oh, yeah, oh, yes, you're right, yes.
And so, but the budget got reduced by 20%.
Correct.
Okay, so does that mean that we have more support for those teachers for a shorter time?
Possibly, yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, it's really hard to, like I said, we're still unpacking some of the details of this. And our first attempt is to say, how much money are we going to get? And then the next to that would be what type of services are we going to provide or not able to provide? And I think that's what we're able to gather this time. Certainly on April, is it 22nd? Yep. April 22nd, we're going to bring you more detail as we gather more information on each of these programs. Now, the transition to kindergarten, we don't have this program, so there's no impact to KSD. But for the districts that has it, the number of slots are being reduced by over 2,000 students. And so some of them have committed to their community, and now all of a sudden there are no additional spots for those students. And so it would be difficult for some of those districts that has the program to recalibrate at this time late in the game. Local effort assistance, again, no impact to KSD, but I guess for those districts that are low assessed valuation district, they're actually losing quite a bit on this one. The local effort assistant is set to provide additional $100 per student, and now they're backing out on it. They're not going to give that $100 to those school districts. Other elements of the budget, we now determine that the IPD is up 2.6%. And so pending signature from the governor, then we could actually prepare our salary schedules now that our contracts have been settled. There are no changes to MSOC, Special Ed, and Transportation Operating Fund. And you know what that means is that if the dollar amount is flat, but the cost of doing business is going up, the value of our money is dropping.
So Rahul, if I can interrupt you for a minute, can all board members, Don, I want to make sure you're understanding this. Does everybody understand the impact of IPD to the Kent School District?
Yes. That's what contracts are based off of for salary increases.
Right.
All right, and, but do you understand the fiscal impact to Kent?
The 2.6%?
Yes.
Well,
What
'cause
does that do
Because
to
if
your
we go
budget?
back to that very
go to
first
the very
slide,
first
where it
slide.
starts talking about IPD and IPD plus one, that's where we get that 16 million,
Okay,
yes?
this is so good, because this, let me explain what this means. So IPD is, the state agrees that they will give you 2.6% increase in funding for salary to your teachers. That's what the big picture is.
Can I clarify that too?
Yeah,
Aren't they just giving us 2.6% salary increase for the number that is allocated by the state?
Yes.
So
Yes.
we have
Yes.
significantly over the allocation.
yes, and Don, this
And-
is super important to understand this. So I know, I'm sure you got a family emergency, but I really want to make
I'm
sure.
doing the math because the amount that $80 million is works out to be $1 million from our district alone.
Which is
So-
huge.
Which is large.
Yes.
But it's not 80. So when we look at numbers, my problem is. Sorry, I should be.
Okay.
Should have my mic on. The problem that I have here is that we often give numbers that make things look bigger or smaller based on whether or not they serve our purposes. And when we're talking about our district, I don't like talking about what the state is doing and how they are impacting themselves right in between what we're talking about with our district is using this much money and this is how much we are losing, this is how much we are going to be spending, this is what we're going to be doing our cuts on. It conflates those two and they are
Okay.
not even remotely the same.
So I'm going to explain from my district why we use that in conjunction, because you're going to go, the first question that's going to happen when this hits the news is, what happened? Why is Kent in a situation where it's got to cut $35 million out of its budget?
30.5.
Thank you, 30.5. Yes, let's be factually correct here. And so you guys need to be ready to explain it. And having the understanding of what's happening at the state level is going to be super important, because otherwise the focus is going to be Kent screwed up. And you need to be able to put in context of, no, this is happening across the state. Nobody stole $30.5 million from the Kent School District. We are not being adequately funded. We're not even being adequately funded, let alone amply being funded. So that's what, it's context for you to understand. Now let me get back, I want to get back to
But
that.
that's 1/30th of the amount. So
But
yes, that's a
1
big
million?
problem.
Okay, here's
when
how
you're
I-
talking about how much we are
Right.
in a deficit by,
Yes.
the magnitude of those two numbers is pretty stark.
So here's how I communicate with our state legislators, because we're going to talk about that in a minute. That's 10 teachers.
Absolutely, and
That's
that's
a
300 teachers on the other side.
Huge number, right?
Yeah.
So,
And that's only for next year. The
Right.
year after that is another 9 million, and that's not coming from the state, that's coming from us, that we didn't properly balance our budget. And then we're doing another $9.5 million. So the amount that we are losing, yes, the state is impacting it, but it is self-inflicted for a lot of it, and that's a problem. That's where my issues
Okay,
come
well,
from.
so let me get back to IPD, because this is really important to understand IPD and the impact it's having on your budget. Because all those millions of dollars, adds up, and then pretty soon you have real money, whatever the goofy quote is. So IPD, and you nailed it, Megan. It does not fund all of the staff that you have.
Right.
And it's 2.6% on the average salary that they provide, not what you actually pay your staff. So I'm pretty sure it's the same, because it is the same in our, it's about $1 million per percentage that it will cost your district. So it costs your district $2.6 million to fund the state flow-through raise to your staff.
So what you're saying is that when IPD goes up, the district pays additional money.
Yes.
Yes.
They don't necessarily receive that same amount.
Yes.
Definitely.
Correct.
Because we're paying more teachers,
More money.
so they only are paying a portion of the teachers.
But that's
So
the-
we're paying all of them, and the amount that we pay our teachers is above what their average, what the
Got it.
expectation
Right.
is of the salary. We pay our teachers significantly above that. So that 2.6, we can't, it doesn't fully fund the 2.6 that we pay all of our
Right.
teachers.
Got
So
it.
I want to
And
be.
staff, I should say. not
So
just-
we're paying that 2.6, so when we talk about the IPD plus one, we're
Yes.
paying 2.6% of their salary in total that Kent pays, not the 2.6 that the state is giving.
So the
Is that
state,
accurate?
what the state does is it would say, okay, you can, I'm just gonna do really simple math here. You've got 100 teachers, but you are only supposed to have 80 based on our formula, right? You've hired some extra, those unnecessary counselors and those nurses that
We
we
have one
don't-
nurse for the
Right.
district is what they give us.
Right, exactly. So if you
That's a
maybe
good
perhaps
example. That is a good example.
hired more than one nurse, they are only gonna give you 2.6% of that one nurse's salary. You then have to come up with the
And
money
is
for
it their
the rest.
actual salary or?
Right, what they determine is.
What they
the-
determine, so if they say that the salary should be 60,000, but we pay 80,000,
Right.
they'll only do 2.6 of that 60,000,
60%.
not
Yes.
what we actually pay is the 80,000.
Exactly. Now,
So
let
if I-
me be perfectly clear. Everybody agrees it's the right thing to do to pay the
Yes.
IPD. Nobody is
Yes.
questioning that. But it means that every time there's an IPD, it's not free to large districts.
Exactly.
It costs us money. So it's important for you to understand that, because when people are questioning what happened, what did you do, why are you paying those teachers all that money, right? It's their, and we are required to flow that money through. Now, I will just tell you, Seattle tried once to say, okay, we will take that money and then everybody just gets that amount of money. And so everybody gets a lower raise. Nobody gets the 2.6, and when we divvy it out, everybody gets one. They went on strike that year. That did not go over well.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we all are dealing with this. You take that money, but these are all the stories that you guys need to be prepared to explain. Nobody screwed up. We didn't fiscally mismanage money. We have a lot of people that we need for our students. Costs have gone up. I love talking to people. They're like, oh, what, inflation impacts school districts too? What, are you kidding? Our people need to be able to live in the community. We need to pay them salaries so they can live here. I can go into, the difference between free and reduced lunch determined by Department of Agriculture poverty level and what Health and Human Services determines poverty. And poverty in our neck of the woods is at $80,000 a year, not $40,000 a year. So we got to make sure we're not keeping our teachers in, right? There's all these things that are part of this that you are going to need to be able to understand and say, there are so many things that contribute to this, and it is a snowball that is gathering snow, and they didn't do us any favors.
This problem, like, I understand that it's not, we aren't the cause of it, right? We're paying more because the market warrants us
Demands that.
paying more, right? We can't hire teachers at the rates that we're getting. The problem is that if the state is not keeping up with this, if we are continually doing this, there will have to be a correction. Like, I'm just saying, like, no matter what, if we continually pay an additional amount and our increases are also increases, these are compounding interest. This is not, and it is a compounding
Yes.
interest that
Yes.
we cannot continue down this path.
Yes.
So the idea that we just because Seattle tried to do something different and it failed and the teachers went on strike, it's a problem. Like, and this is a problem that we need to take ownership of this issue, because the problem isn't a matter of the teachers aren't getting paid enough or they're getting paid too much or any of that. It is the discrepancy between the two that is going to cause us to continually reduce the amount that we are gaining in our budget from the state, while continually increasing our outgoing to our staffing on an annual basis that continually rises. And at some point, that we aren't going to be able to do what we are doing right now, where we will get to a point where we cannot continue this. And so why are we playing this farce of us saying, oh, well, we don't want to battle it now, we're going to leave that for later and leave that for someone else to fix? Because as long as we continue doing what we're doing right now, as long as we continue with this idea that we're going to continue paying the IPD and it matches what we should, sure, that's true. But the real problem is that the state is not appropriately funding us. And as long as we don't take that by the horns and say that's where our problem is and that's where our issues are, we will continue to get this disparity until we get to a point where we cannot. We just will not have the funding to do so, no matter how much we ask for, because at some point we hit a limit and say, we can't ask for our community to give us any more money.
So it sounds like you're agreeing with us.
Yes,
Steve's
all right,
understanding
thank you.
us. We're all
I'm so
agreeing.
glad that was taped,
Yes.
because that was perfect.
Yeah,
And
that's-
Rahul,
So
I'm gonna push pause, because that was exactly what you need to say. And that is exactly how you need to be communicating this to your community of, we are in this situation and we're having to cut the money because we're required by law to balance the budget. Please come alongside us, because the next legislative session is a budget session. And they just passed that millionaire's tax, and they didn't put really great guardrails around. They made some noises, but that's one of the things we did in our community, is we brought again our PTAs, we brought in our labor partners, we brought in community members, city council people, and we all got together and we had advocacy planning sessions. And we went down to Olympia last year, and you can see it didn't do great work. But we went down to Olympia together, because the power of showing up with your board and your superintendent and your CFO and your labor president and your PTA president, and you all go in and say, this is not sustainable. You guys need to do your job. It makes a difference.
If I may, very quick, thank you, Director Cook. You
That was amazing.
couldn't have said it better, and that's one. Secondly, to your point, Sandy, about the communication of a board superintendent governance team in making sure we first understand what the problem is and where it lies. And next is, how are we going to work together to make sure that we try to maintain fiscal solvency as we move forward. The other piece is invite us all to come. I saw Sandy there, Director Gregory and Director Song and I were there. However, I am going to another plea for superintendents and board members and others. We're always there. They get tired of us. I'm going to say that. We need to get our community there and our community to understand what we're talking about. And so, and I'm also going to ask that we let Raul finish up so that we can keep moving forward. So
There's one thing that I would ask of Raul. Can we get a graph of some sort, or something that shows what this is doing and how long this has been going on and what the trajectory is? Because I think that's something that people don't understand. I mean, we all do, because we're in here talking about it all the time. But if you show a graph of, here's what the state is saying we're paying, and here's how much we're doing on that. If we keep at it, this is where we would be, and how many teachers we would have, and where that would put us. And if we keep where we are at, and that trajectory continues in the next 20 years, where does that put us, and at what point do we end up doubling our budget? Because at some point we do.
Right.
And so, I feel like that will be a bigger point to bring. And I think we should bus our entire people, anyone that wants to go to the Capitol, we should bus them all down there. Take them all with us and say, let's talk to them. Let them tell
Okay,
our community directly.
Brilliant. So I'm gonna let Rahul finish.
Yep.
And
Okay.
then we're gonna have this amazing brainstorming conversation.
Okay.
Because you've got to start with educating your community.
Yep.
Getting them a little riled up. And then how are we gonna bust them down there?
So,
Okay.
thank you. So, just as a point of reference, as we communicate with our communities, there is a slide on the February 4th presentation, and we labeled them over formula. And just so you know, the topic that we're talking about, there's about over 50 million for Kent School District. So, to determine what the let's say 2.6 million of $50 million, just a quick math, it tells you what is not funded, right? So,
I think that, to the point, and I remember the over formula and
Yep.
seeing it, you showed it in both ways, both over formula in the number of staff that we have and
and-
over formula for the average salary.
correct, yes.
I think that it would be a valuable, the one I'm thinking of is the chart that we show, the number of staffing compared to the number of students, and how we've showed a consistent staffing with the declining student. And then putting those three kind of layered together to show that with our overfunding,
Over formula.
over formula,
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
I was like, that word's not coming.
Overfunding.
The over formula, kind of over that same time period too.
Yeah. So the last item on this slide is that no inflationary increase for national board certificate bonuses. Just to clarify, there were rumors out there that the national board certificate bonus is gone. That's not true. The bonus is still here, it's just not getting the inflationary increase. And so just want to be able to clarify that.
So it's remaining flat.
Remaining flat,
It's
yes.
remaining flat. There's still a bonus, but it's flat. It
Yeah.
has not increased like it normally
Correct.
has.
And there was, I want to say there's two different pieces to it.
Yeah.
And both of those pieces are still there, and I'm sorry
Yes,
that I.
the other one is I think the high poverty one, and then this one is the.
Title I.
Yeah,
Title I.
that's right, yes. Both of them are flat,
Okay.
yes. So here are some of the key takeaways from all the things that we've heard. The assumptions and estimates may change before a budget is finalized. As you could see, the things are still fluid at this time. More analysis of the enacted budget, state budget, and its forecast confirm the impact to KSD in 26-27. So what we've shown you tonight are just our preliminary analysis of them. We need to dig deeper. Because on this list, you would see that there are pluses, but there are also minuses. What we'd like to be able to do is, on the pluses, do we have some share of that? And so we're going to start digging into it in the succeeding days.
Could you talk about bullet point number 3? Because I think that, again, talking about that, it's not people running away from our district. And people feel that there's houses being built everywhere. That used to be a field, and now it's 17 houses or a new apartment complex or whatever that looks like. There's so many more people around here. How is the enrollment getting smaller?
Yeah, so, and Lisa could actually talk about that in terms of the methodology, because I think your question could be explained in terms of the methodology that Lisa used in projecting, particularly the birth rate. What's happening with our birth rate, and what's happening with the students that are exiting. So, Lisa?
Yeah, so speaking about the enrollment projection methodology, we use a very common method. It's called the cohort survival percentage. And you can look at it, a number of ways. You can just do a 100% roll-up from, okay, first graders are going to become my next year second graders. You can look at a historical survival percentage rate, which typically that's kind of where we land, and I look at it like 12 different ways, really. You can take an average, you can take, a weighted average. This year, it turned out that it pretty much ended up being a 100% roll-up, even though it was a cohort method. But what we're seeing, so really, if you look at by grade, of course, I project by school, by grade. So I have a cohort survival by every school and then district overall. But again, what we're seeing is birth rates have been dropping for the past 4 or 5 or 6 years, probably longer. So now that we're catching up to that, and now that those babies are now kindergartners, there's much less of them. And so you've got a I'll say, a higher 12th grade class rolling out, but a smaller kindergartner class rolling in. So the net result is you're losing overall enrollment. And that's what we're seeing.
And that's, to be clear, that is not unique to Kent.
Right.
That is happening. When I started, this has become a personal pet session of mine. When I was elected in 2009, the birth rate in the US was 2.0. So every woman had 2.0 kids.
Right.
Last year it was 1.6 in the US. That's a 20% drop. For your numbers, Don, that's a 20% drop in babies being born in this country. And it is endemic, rural, urban, red state, blue state. Women are not having children. And it is particular, and the reason why it's because the rest of the, I don't know what the politically correct term, but the rest of the world that's similar to our economic status, they have already been there. They're already below that 2.0, is because our teenage pregnancy rates have dropped precipitously in the last 15 years. Now, there's a lot of people who take credit for that, but whatever it is, it's dropped, and that's not something we're gonna fix,
But
right?
does that, so like, if you were to, like, say today, drop the birth rate of 18-year-olds, right? And you did that for the 18 to 25-year-olds. If they do end up having kids, they likely are not gonna have kids until they're much older. But that does mean there's going to be a period where that number drops a lot more than it will be overall. Because those people that would have had kids, especially if you had a child at 18, it's very likely that you will have more children during that during the next 3, 4, 5 years. It's less likely if you haven't had kids at 18 that you would have those 3, 4, 5 kids after that, right?
Exactly.
And so part of me wonders if that's growing pains that we are going to see adjust back the other direction slightly.
So there, again, I've become obsessed with this because, again, it's impacting all of us. We're all seeing our kindergarten classes 200, 300 students smaller than our graduating seniors. What they've seen is that the teenage is plummeted. And you're right, if you start having kids at 15, 16, you tend to have more than if you don't start till you're 35. There is a small uptick in women in their 30s having more
children.
More women in their 30s having children than there were previously, but it's not enough to
It
compensate.
doesn't balance it out, no.
Yeah.
Well, and
No.
it wouldn't, because it would take time for
Yeah.
those that were 18 to then become 35. right?
Correct.
And have kids when they're a little
Right,
older.
and maybe, but it's not gonna overcome.
Well, it's, no.
And
of course
the
not.
other key factor is housing prices.
Yeah.
These houses that are being built in our neck of the woods, you're a young family, you cannot afford. My oldest is 32, married, and they're like, even if I come up with 10% down or 20% down on $1 million house, I still have an $800,000 mortgage.
Yeah.
I can't afford
Right.
to live in this
a hi-
area. And so
and a higher
that's-
interest too.
That
Higher
is the
interest.
double whammy. But again, that is gonna be so key that you guys understand that, and I'm glad that you're already thinking about it, because that's gonna be, well, they're all going to private schools. And definitely look at the data, the state board tracks number of kids in private schools, you will see it's.
When we started the year, we were off by 792. What is that number today?
We've been monitoring our enrollment month by month, and so from the projection drop by 792, we are keeping it roughly at about the same level. So meaning like, originally our hope is that those 72, some of them might come back. Not the case. They didn't come back, nor we're reducing any further number of students. They're pretty even
No,
from
I
the
mean,
over
so
number.
like we were off on our numbers. We were off on an uptrend of 792 more students is what we had projected than what we actually got. What number are we different today? So like, obviously, we've had more students enroll or less students enroll, so it's not 792 anymore. It couldn't be. So what is that number today?
Yeah, so well, Lisa might be able to look at it, the latest report in April.
So I think what you're asking, just to be clear, it's the so same time month last year to this year.
No, I just mean like
by
enrollment for the year, that like what we were planning for was 792 less than.
Well, the monthly is important in the projection
Yes,
that we
but I'm
have.
saying
so-
for this year, so we're working off of what numbers we actually have. Like, so if we were 792 off and then we gained 800 students, now we're plus 8, like, that's the number that I'm curious.
Yeah,
That's just,
and that is in our monthly budget report that we get once a month at a board meeting. We get.
We do that too.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
yes,
student by student, and we're like you, we're obsessing over, okay.
yeah.
Yeah, and it took us, we had a year where we over projected by 400, and then you don't make that mistake again. And so then you get super conservative with your enrollment projections after that.
My second year of teaching was due to a fact that Bellevue underprojected, and then I got hired in October to fill because their classes were too big.
So I believe Ms. Taylor.
Okay, so right now we are 545 FTE below what we projected on an FTE basis.
Okay, so we've improved by
Improve a
300.
little.
That's right.
Closer to what we projected, not
Correct.
improved, but,
Right.
yeah.
But I can tell you that we are now on the normal trend where from February through June, we lose students.
Yeah.
So we're not going to be, this isn't going
By
to
the
be
end of the year,
improving.
but that wasn't the number that was projected for the end of the year, that was the beginning of the year projection, right? The 792 off.
Right, yeah. Our projections are projected in October enrollment.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
And so it's one number it's a flat projection. They don't,
Well, I-
792 is the projection for the year.
And if we ended up to have more, then that would be more revenue by the time we close the books.
So
Yes.
the way it works is you submit to the state, here's how many students we think we're going to have this year, and then you get
Funding based on that amount.
funding based on that projection through December, and then starting in January, you get what you actually had. So if you over projected,
You
they
get-
subtract
yeah.
that amount from your January through June monthly, or if you over project, or under projected, then they add money in January.
And from
So-
January forward, and from January through August, actually, June or August, our apportionment payment on an annualized basis will vary now from month to month as enrollment varies. So if 2 kids leave, well, you'll see a little tweak to our apportionment payment. If we get too much, yeah.
And that's why our registrars are doing count day at the beginning of every month.
Yes.
And I've shared openly the state number on how that number has dropped in enrollment.
9,000.
That's right, so.
I think also, sorry, when you talked about that 20%, right, that the birth rate has dropped, we looked at our numbers of students of entering kindergarten class 10 years ago. I'm pretty sure it was like right at 2,000, like it was almost like on the dot, and we just saw 1,600.
Yes.
20%. So that sounds like we're following national averages. Pretty
Yeah.
pretty on.
And
So,
And so 2 thoughts on that. One, that again, that's just important context. As you're
Yes.
out in the community and people are like, well, what happened? And, why is Kent losing all the students? I always like, we didn't misplace the kids. We just don't. But being able to explain, it's a decline in birth rates. And by the way, it's because teenagers aren't having babies. So, you can blame
Which
it
is
on
not
social media.
necessarily a bad thing. It's not suggesting that teenagers go
I
out
would go as far
pregnant.
as say
Right.
it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Right, exactly, right? And so.
Just
I know
wanting to
that's a
say
wild
that out
statement.
loud.
Right, where it's not a problem that's gonna get solved
I
anytime
could just
soon.
see that as a soundbite.
So the direct impact of the declining enrollment, it actually reduces your revenue faster than you could reduce your expenditures. As an example, if our enrollment drops by 100 students, now you don't know where those drops are coming from. Yeah, it could be a first grade, second grade, third grade at one building. There are maybe 3 of them, and then 5 here, 20 here, 10 here. It's not enough for you to be able, just because there's 100, there's a presumption that you could reduce your staffing by 4 FTE, right?
No.
You can't do that because they're coming from all different grade level and different buildings. And so it doesn't always translate into a reduction in expenditures. Now, the flip side of that is that an increasing enrollment gets increase the revenue faster than you could increase your expenditure, because there may be some empty seats that those 100 children could come into without adding staffing. So I just want to, like when you hear something like that, and you'd say, well, you lost 100 students. Why are you not reducing your expenditure? It's because of those. It's a function of class loading, depending on the projection by enrollment, by building, by grade level, by building. I want to go back into the second bullet, because I mentioned the impact to KSD in 26-27, but and beyond is actually very critical. You notice that I share that the state budget, they balance their budget using a reserve of $2.3 billion. And that's alarming, because then what would happen in 27, 28, and beyond? And if they are using a reserve, that means that they're operating a deficit, using one-time money to balance the budget. Based on that information, I could maybe predict that the 27, 28, and beyond would be much more difficult for the state. How would that translate to education in the future? And so I just want to be able to bring that as a context. Now, state funding, as we've already talked about here, it's not catching up with the increasing cost of doing business. We learn from, MSOC, special ed, and transportation. EP&O levy will expire on December 31. The community support is really critical in this case to maintain or increase this funding source. A continuous structural deficit in current and projected years, which requires implementing budget cuts for the next 3 years to maintain a minimum of 5%. That is, again, a very difficult exercise to do, but it's needed. We need to do that. And then ending fund balance, I'm bringing this as a context, just for your reference. Our ending fund balance and the level of cash balance are generally aligned. So depending on the level of our ending fund balance, our cash balance follows, right? And so the district's average monthly cash requirement to meet all our financial commitment is approximately $47 million every month. That includes payroll, bills, utilities, insurance, all of which average about $47 million. And so I just want to be able to provide you with some context here. What are the different levels of percent and the dollar amount in terms of ending fund balance? So at 5%, that means $26.8 million. And for every 1% of ending fund balance, that's about additional $5.4 million. And so how critical that is that, like for example, I looked at our March payroll, right? We just paid the March payroll. March 30th, our cash balance was about $23 million. The payroll is approximately, payroll and some of the other payroll costs, is approximately $20 million. We have not received our apportionment yet. And so if we were to pay the payroll, that leaves us with about $3 million on a district our size. Fortunately, on the 31st, apportionment came. And by the way, I asked and say, has the state failed in sending their apportionment? Apparently, over a long period of time, it's only once that they failed.
Well, that's good.
But I'm not worried about that. I'm more worried about some of the legislation that they had before, where they are planning to postpone. That's what Sandy was talking about, like proposing to postpone some of our apportionment by a day or two in the next month. And that would create a significant cash flow problem if that were to happen. And so that's why I think I put this as a reference. It's for you to think about and consider, but just so when you're needing to look at it, at least you know what the amount is per level of ending fund balance.
But the advice is still not to look at that until we've balanced our budget, like adjusting
Yeah, I think that's
this
just for your context. I would not muck about with your ending fund balance right now, just
Yeah.
because.
Yeah, just as a reminder, our board has had conversations about fund balance, and we first started it, I believe, in a work session where we talked about at WASDA. We heard what a bill was being floated around about increasing it. which raised all kinds of,
Hysteria.
and I think I was in the same session as Sandy was.
Yes.
But that's the only reason
I
we
may have.
provided it, so the board can see that, as what
Yeah,
that
and I
looks like.
think they did rate where you're on a list is now 6%. I think they changed that you end up on the financial watch list if you're
Yeah.
reserved. Now, it doesn't mean anything, guess what, we're on the list.
I would
It does-
imagine most districts are on that list.
It's actually, yeah, but again, it's just this is important information for you to have as you're out in the community. You're like, why are you on the watch list? What have you done wrong? Well, they,
But
they changed these
even if
rules.
even if we don't change it, or we do change it, that doesn't stop the district from saving more money or saving less money.
Right.
It's-
Yes.
Yeah,
that doesn't-
absolutely.
That can be changed at any time.
I don't think, at least I haven't heard anybody advocating for deeper cuts. I think what it is this is good information to know so we can continue to future plan. And what does that look like long-term?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's the minimum, right? You've set the minimum, it's guidance the board has given to staff of don't let the amount go below that. Now, we had to do some tweaking in our superintendent evaluation. We were like, unless we tell you it's okay to go below the minimum fund balance, because it turns out we had to. So, yeah, this is all just guidance.
Has your board already started your superintendent's evaluation?
Oh, good. Guess what? That's on the agenda.
Oh,
We're going to
great.
talk about it.
Yeah.
You had asked earlier about the board policy, so it was adopted in 2003.
Ah.
And it was last revised in May of 2021, and it's been revised 5 times.
It's been looked at recently because
Yeah.
we dropped it, I remember.
2021 was the last time
I
it was
wanna
looked
say,
at. I just
what was
wanted
it
to,
at?
I looked
Thank
it
you.
up.
Was it
appreciate
at
it.
I
8?
don't.
And we
I don't
dropped it
remember.
down to 5?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's what the note said,
Okay,
8 to 5.
Yes.
great.
So in terms of timeline, we have quite a few dates left here during our budget development. April 22nd is the next date. That is a work session number 1. I think that's the meeting where I said I'm going to bring a little bit more detail about the state budget. Who knows? The governor still hasn't signed them yet. And what surprises he might bring. And then in May, we have one work session number 2. And in June, we have 2 meetings, but 4 items to take care of, one of which is the public hearing on the budget. And that is a place where a community could really speak about the budget. But at every level, the community could actually participate in the process by sending us emails, sending us comments, listen to this conversation in the work session. And the 24th would be the board adoption. So the budget adoption. So with that, I think you've asked your question, but feel free to ask some more.
So your job, can you put the dates back up? Can you go back one? So let's talk about what your role is, because you've got 2 more budget work sessions, and really those are going to be information of a little more detail on the cuts.
Is May also a policy work session, or is it just budget?
I think it's
On the-
Is it,
On the
Do
13th.
we have,
on the 13th.
it's just budget?
I can
Just
look
budget,
at the
I think.
calendar.
It's by itself.
It's policy. On May 13th. But it's also budget?
We would probably, it's
Probably
not
a 1-hour
been
budget.
unheard of that we did both of them in a day.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I had it in my calendar right.
Well, and I'll just prep you that after the April 22nd, again, it's coming out of the oven. It's fully baked, because May 13th is way too late for notice, for RIF notices, because May 15th is the magic date. So any reduction in force that's going to happen, you're done by April 22nd. You cannot add new.
What's the purpose of the public hearing?
It's required by law.
It's
required.
it's required by law.
But I mean, it wasn't required by law for no reason. It was required by law
Yeah,
for a reason.
the idea is that it is raising public awareness, that there is a vote to be happened on the budget, and you're invited to come make public comment. I think over time, what has become the reality is at that point, there's
But I mean, we could change that. Why don't we move that to the 22nd of April, and then we can
Oh,
have our
that's,
community
that's
come in and
in the
talk
law.
about it.
That's in the law.
Yeah.
and the
Well, but I
timing
mean, we
of it.
could have a.
You could have-
like, we could have as many public hearings as we want, I
You
would
can-
assume.
Yeah, this public hearing is, what's the word I'm looking for? It's
Mandated.
defined, yeah, it's
Yeah.
mandated by law,
Mandated.
that you have to
Yes.
have this public hearing.
But I mean, like, if we're trying to do that outreach, right, we're trying to get them involved. We want them to come in and give their input in whatever ways they want.
Yep.
And to feel like they actually have skin in the game, so to say, right? Telling them to come out 2 weeks beforehand when there's nothing that can be done feels disingenuous, right?
Absolutely.
And so
And
I
which
just,
is why we
I don't
had-
see any other meetings up here where the public is not only invited, but encouraged to be
I think
here.
every single one of them, we have open session. I think just the other day, we had
Our
over
work sessions are
45
not.
We had over 45 comments in public session, though.
We don't have any
So
work
do you-
sessions
do you
that have
guys
any
do town
comments.
halls?
We have not
Yep,
done a
I
town
had
hall
two
since I've
community
been here.
meetings.
Yep.
I had two community meetings in addition to
yeah.
the survey.
That were board
Hmm.
community meetings or district
Or
community?
could attend.
District.
And it was
Okay.
budget
District.
related.
Okay, so I know this sounds horrific, but this, for 26, 27, it's done. And it may not be, there are gonna be like nobody happy with this. I mean, that's just the, it's a
I hope
huge-
someone's happy with it, because they're gonna have to vote in November.
Well, you're not, they're not. Nobody gets into this work to hurt kids and staff. You don't, this is horrific, having to make these kind of cuts.
Oh, I meant the community, not us.
And they're not gonna be happy.
Yeah.
And you're not gonna be happy, and staff is not gonna be happy. Nobody's joyful over this. This is awful, what you're having to do. And it is important, not only to you, to recognize and sit for a minute of, I hate this. And that's what's driving my anger and my frustration, is because I don't want this. I'm waiting for that magic problem solved, state stepped in and saved us, whatever, that this, I don't have to do this to our students and our staff and our community, because this is, nobody does this job for free to do this. It's awful. Now, your community is also going to mourn the loss, because this is a grief budget. And so what we're doing tonight is making sure you're ready to be there in your community, support them in their grief. And I've heard really great understanding of why this is happening, all the different impacts, state, declining birth rates, all those things, so that you can say, yes, this is awful, but I can assure you, we are still educating your child. And I still care about the students in this district and the staff. We're still having third grade in September. We will still be, football will still be being played. We will still have, right, that we have worked to try to keep this so that your child, when they show up for school, will see some differences, but it's not going to be dramatic differences. That's been the focus, and that's why these were the priorities, was to keep it out of the classroom. But we had to do this, we're required by state law. So that is what you guys get to do between now and when you vote on this in June 24th. Then you start for the next year. And that's when you want to start talking about, okay, what does meaningful community engagement look like? Because I also have learned the hard way, you don't ask people questions if you can't provide the answer, right? We did a community.
Don't give them options, they can't.
Yeah.
They can't choose.
Correct.
Right. We did one where it was after they had cut the last professional development day. The state used to fund 10 professional development days, and now they fund 0. And so we were trying to figure out, and so we were gonna do a release time for staff, either a late morning or an early release. So we surveyed our community, and we gave them all 5 days and morning, afternoon options, and what do you want? We're going to, yep, Friday afternoon by a huge percentage was the choice. And then we got together and went,
We can't do that.
It's not gonna work. We can't do Friday afternoon. So then we announced it was Wednesday afternoon, and it took years to undo that. So meaningful community engagement is asking the questions where you can take the information and do what they're asking you to do, which is why, and I know that we didn't have time, you, Kent, we didn't have time, but that's where these came from, was we went out to our community and said, what is important to you? We didn't ask, what do you want us to cut? But we said, what is important to you? And then we basically gave them to you, and figuring that
It's like
the Kent
interest-based
was pretty.
bargaining.
Right.
Right. We can't change a bargained agreement. You, the community, cannot step in and say, pay staff less, right?
No.
That's not
We've
it.
got
What-
4
no.
minutes left. I just want to make sure if there's
Do we?
anything
I
that
thought
you
we
want
got
to.
No, we have an hour.
Oh.
We have an hour and 4
Oh,
minutes.
I thought we were done at 7. I'm
Nope.
sorry.
No, what I meant was, because there's different strategies and different types of bargaining, right? And so interest-based bargaining is you
Yes.
bring
Yes,
problems to the table.
Yep.
These are things that we are interested in, and then you work collaboratively to come up with solutions. You don't come and
Yes.
propose, here's my solution.
yes, yes.
Right.
Yeah, we use that in our district, and it's
I
been,
wanted to add to your support
Yes.
piece and the communication is supporting each other, not just the community and
Right.
understanding, because supporting each other, and by the way, that includes the superintendent and their team. And that's coming off together as one KSD. It is really understanding where we are and what we need to do together, because this is hard work. And I just wanted to add that, supporting each other.
yeah. So you're gonna get hit up in the grocery store. I put my milk in the cart at the very end of my run.
And ice cream, right?
Yes.
Milk and ice cream at
Yep.
the end.
Yes, or I go into Lake Washington. I don't have time for this today. The soccer fields, the concert hall, you're gonna get hit. Neighbors are gonna be unhappy, and rightfully so. And so having this information, I've heard, this, I did this in my district, but not these specific ones. I would tell people, you wanna go to the April 1st work retreat the board had, it's all recorded, go to 6:20. Dawn does an amazing job of explaining the situation. That is so powerful, like, oh, okay, I'm now seeing the frustration and how we're trying to figure out how to resolve it. I'm serious. I would keep those times where you've heard board members wrestle with the questions you know your community is gonna be asking, so they can see you, yeah, we get this is tough. We're just a little ahead of you on the grief curve, right? So, I'm feeling really good that you guys are gonna be able to go out and explain. And then I will be back in June, and we can talk about, start planning, because you wanna start in September if you're gonna do some really meaningful community engagement around budget or anything. But you wanna start in September because of this timeline of, you don't have, but if you wait, certainly if you wait till the public hearing, but even April is too late. And you're gonna wanna get your community alongside and start talking about how are we advocating, because it is a budget session, and they did not set themselves up for success in funding education.
Raul, can you also provide what the state, for our district, what they fund us for? Like, they assume that we have 25,000 students and you get 100 teachers and we pay those teachers this amount. Can you provide one of those slides for us too, so we can
Yeah.
have that when we're talking to people? Because that's the power of people understanding how they're underfunding. So the
It's
reality
in the
is,
informational one, the overfunding, both by number of teachers and by how much we pay teachers.
no, I'm saying, what does in that over formula, it doesn't actually tell you the state is funding us at 25. The state says Kent School District gets 100 teachers. It doesn't say that specifically. It gives us the numbers, but it doesn't give us the.
Oh, so not the budget amount, but the actual
The
number.
actual number. So you can say, we have 1,000 staff members. We have more than that, but I'm just giving it.
Sure.
the state says you get 1,000 and we have 1,900. We have 900 more staff. Well, why do we have 900 more staff? People assume that it's administrative or whatever. Well, it's not. We need extra bus drivers because our school district is too big. We need nurses and so many.
I would push back a bit and say, I think some of the stories are gonna be more effective. I
Right.
think Dawn's point about nurses.
Right.
Right, the state gives us one nurse.
One nurse,
Do you
yes.
really want one nurse
25,000.
for the
Right.
whole district, right? Those are the kind of stories,
Yes.
so it's just some of those counselors, here's how many counselors you
Right.
get for middle school.
We've provided some of those over time,
Yeah,
so, because it's not new
Right.
for us. so-
Right.
But,
And-
yeah.
and that's gonna be helpful, and that's gonna be super helpful when we start talking about how you're gonna
Right.
do this advocacy for next year of, here's what this looks like. But yes, I think rather than throwing a bunch of numbers at people, but just, for example,
Yeah.
we
No,
get
but-
one nurse.
Right, but I think one of the challenges that I was having with people when we were talking, when I was running last year, people were coming to me and they're like, well, why do you think why are we in this place? And I'm like, well, the state only gives us this, they think we can run the district with 100 people and we have 190,
Yeah.
showing people that we have more staff. We don't, but then they assume that we have all these administrators.
Right.
And it's not, it's security staff, or it's this, it's these different types of people to keep kids safe, to keep kids,
Right,
nutrition
which is why I think,
services.
just picking,
Yeah.
because I know Raul's got a busy couple of months ahead of him. But just a couple of
Yes.
those examples. Security is another great
Yeah,
one that we
another
don't get
great one.
funded.
Gotta
My personal favorite is that we pay the state auditor $1,000 to come in and audit us, $100,000 to come in and audit us. The state agent, you didn't know that? That's on the
Yeah,
fine line.
yeah, we have to do that, yeah.
Yeah, so we pay a state agency $100,000, a teacher, I do everything in teacher numbers, to audit another government
State
agency. Yeah,
I love-
Anyway.
I love that your number for teachers is $100,000, because man, I should come work in your district.
well,
it's
that's
benefits.
actually,
It's
well,
benefits.
that's-
Benefits.
I know.
It's
Yeah.
salary plus benefits.
I know, I'm just thinking like, wow,
That's about 70,000 gross.
That's
as
low.
as a beginning teacher,
It's low.
like that feels like
it's
big
low,
money.
but it's an easy math. Yeah. Okay, I'm feeling really good that you guys are as ready as you can be to handle the next couple of months, because they are gonna be rough. You will get through it. There are many of us that have gotten through this. You're not closing any schools, so that's, huge. You're gonna wanna start thinking about what lower birth rates are, but we're not planting that seed today. So I've heard some really great understanding why we're here. That's going to be the biggest thing that you're addressing, and reassuring people, we care, we're upset, we're unhappy too, and then we'll start talking in June of what this is going to look like for next year for meaningful community engagement. Okay, that was a lot. Do we need a little bio break?
Yes,
That
please.
would be
Yes.
helpful, thank you.
Okay, let's take a 5-minute bio break, and then we're going to talk superintendent evaluation, not That was the end of the really deep, frustrating, heartbreaking work. Now we're going to talk about some of the things that are going to happen between now and June. And the first one we're going to talk about is the superintendent evaluation. We are not evaluating the superintendent right now. That is not happening. But I just want to explain, because I remember what it was like the first time I evaluated a superintendent 3 months after getting on the job. Like, I am so not qualified for this. So just to help mostly Laura and Teresa be ready for this, but to kind of give the big picture context about the superintendent evaluation, why it's done, best practices around it. There's a variety of ways of actually doing it, and it depends on the type of governance structure, but there are best practices for all ways of doing it. So the reason why you do it is it's required by law. There is an RCW, for those of you who are really bored, it's 28A 405.100, and the state legislature requires that boards evaluate their superintendents on an annual basis. So there you go. This is one of your legally required jobs to do. It's also in, I guarantee, Israel's contract. So there is a timeline that it needs to be done in advance of the year end of the contract, which has got to be June 30th. Everybody else, I editorialized later of Seattle doing their mid-year start. But all superintendent contracts in Washington State end on June 30th. So it has to be done well in advance. So it's done in May. And there will be an evaluation process. You can do it in executive session. You can do it in public. That is determined between you, the superintendent, and the board of how you want to do it. But it is something, because it is a review of an employee or a personnel, an executive sessionable opportunity. It is important to do this, in addition, because it's required by law, but it's a way of, one, reviewing the work that has been done in the last year and demonstrating to the district, here's how the superintendent has met the requirements, the expectations, this is why we are retaining the superintendent, or here are some concerns, and to put the superintendent on notice that you didn't quite fulfill these obligations, and we're a little worried. Superintendents have in Washington, it's a 1-year contract that has options out for 3 years is how they work. So Israel has a contract out till the 2028, right? You only have 2 more years? You didn't get it extended out last year? Should have checked that beforehand. Okay, so that is the one thing that gets voted on in public. So that will be in probably your first June meeting, is a voting on the contract, whether to renew, extend out, or to end the contract. So that is the one thing that is done in public for sure. It will be on your agenda that you vote on. The evaluation process is the documentation for the decision that you make. Okay. So here's the thing.
At what point do we know what the criteria is that we're going to be basing it on?
Excellent. So you made that decision last year.
No.
Yes, you did, because I have that. I have last year's evaluation. It is, you use in Kent the Washington State School Board Directors Superintendent Evaluation rubric that they have on the website. Now, I'm just going to do a little advertisement here. So let me explain that rubric and why it is clunky as all get out. It was created in 2011, 2012, at the same time that the state passed the TPEP law, the Teacher Professional Educators. So that law required a much more robust evaluation of our teachers and principals. And there were a couple of models. Districts had to vote to choose which model they wanted. I won't go into the politics of it, but the decision was made, okay, we got to create one for the superintendents, then we're going to take this model for teachers, and we're going to shove superintendent work into this teacher evaluation model. Problem solved. And so that's what we've had to operate under, and so it is clunky because it was not designed for evaluating a superintendent. There is a new model available through WASDA. It is free. You cannot use it this year because you already told Israel that you were going to use the old version, and that's what he's been operating under for the last year. So you can't switch evaluation models midstream, but I highly encourage.
When would we have voted on that? I'm sorry, I'm just blanking on when we did that.
It's a decision that you make in the summer as you head into the next school year.
I guess I just don't remember it, but it's okay.
And then I also believe that in the evaluation that was done last year, highlighting certain portions because they're pretty broad.
Yes.
Very broad.
Yes.
That the board said, here's things that we would like to see emphasized. We'd like to hear more about this. And so that was part of the evaluation and put into the evaluation last year.
Yep. Right, and that's an option, right? You can talk about all that. In a couple things. One, you're going to want to make sure everybody gets a copy of Israel's contract so you know what, right, what, because, and I say this with all love and respect, but you don't do the required evaluation and you let go a superintendent, you will end up paying the remainder of his salary, and that's 3 teachers, right? Because you also have to have then another superintendent. So you've got to make sure that you are following the process and you're doing this in a way, and that the evaluation is based on what you told Israel you were going to evaluate them on. You can't bring in new things or do any surprises because then you, yeah, okay. And I'm not saying that's happening, but I've done enough. And I've done some districts where they just did a little 3-sentence, did a great job, thank you very much, called it their evaluation. And then when they wanted to get rid of the superintendent, they were stuck because they hadn't followed the law. So yeah, make sure that you're reading what is in the contract, that you're following the contract, because again, that's another way to get stuck with the superintendent is to be in violation of the contract. Now, here's the other part of this evaluation. It is not 5 separate evaluations. It is one evaluation of the boards. And so that's going to be the other part of it is you guys have to come to consensus on how that evaluation gets written and scored, because you don't get to do 5 different independent evaluations. It is the board's evaluation of the superintendent. So that is going to be an important conversation that you will have, I'm guessing in an executive session, of how you're going to create consensus on the evaluation, because that does become a public document. Here's the thing, that's all the negative, heavy-duty stuff. Superintendents want to be evaluated. They need support and guidance of how they can improve their practice to become better superintendents. They don't like you're doing a great job, thanks a lot, thumbs up evaluation. That is not useful to them. So a good quality evaluation can be transformative for your superintendent and for your district. And it then is fantastic for you then to go out to your community and say, this is why we're renewing the contract. Look at what the evidence that we're using to renew the contract. This is what's been happening and this is why we're renewing it. So that, again, is documentation that you've determined by using this rubric. So, and again, please, objective. You've got to keep it objective. I have been in superintendent evaluations where I was practically curled up in a fetal position because we were talking about clothes the superintendent was wearing and where the superintendent lived and oh yeah.
None of that matters.
Yeah. Yeah, so keep it based on the documentation that is been provided and that is part of that rubric that you're using. If you don't provide an objective evaluation, you can't expect your superintendent to make progress, right? If your evaluation is, I don't like you and I'm angry at you, that doesn't help Israel improve his practice, right? We want to make sure, we are very concerned about our Latino Hispanic math scores. We want to see improvement at that. Now Israel's got something he can work with, right? So that's the work you're going to do. And you're going to want to make sure you have your strategic plan with you in this process, because then asking Israel, I think we should have a swimming pool. Okay, and I'm
Never been part of the evaluation.
We're not getting a pool, not happening.
Okay, this is a hot topic in our district as well.
Do you have pools in your district?
We have 0 pools in our district. Yep,
We
none.
agree.
Not only do we not have them in our schools, we don't have any in the 60-mile radius of our district. In
That's a
our
problem.
school district, we don't have a single swimming pool. No cities, no county, no,
No YMCA, nothing.
we have no swimming pools. Our students have to travel outside the district to go to other neighboring districts' swimming pools. They get to start practice at 4:30 in the morning. It's awesome. Anyway, but let's say, for example, and I'm just teasing Megan, that you said, I'm dinging you because we don't have a pool in the district. There's nothing in your strategic plan. There's nothing in your budget for a pool. You can't ding him for something that's not part of your strategic plan or not part of your budget or not part of the clear expectations that you made.
I have a question. I have a clarifying question on
Yes.
that example. So there is, in the strategic plan, we need to improve math scores. And we'll make that is not, I don't think that's actually in there, but whatever. I'm just using an example.
I hope it is.
It is, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying, whatever
Yeah.
the percentage is.
High-quality instruction.
High-quality instruction, whatever.
Yep.
So we want to see the math scores increase by 40%. And the district went off and put in a new curriculum to then, but it's not going to improve the scores in a year, it's going to take 2 years. You would still evaluate saying, we see what you've done and we see the improvement. You can't ding them on, right? You can't ding them because it's going to take time for whatever.
Yes, which is, yes, you need to take context into consideration,
Okay.
right?
It's like student growth goals, right? Like
Yeah.
Right.
you have your pre-assessment, your initial
Right.
data point, and then you have to have at least one other data point before you have your final.
Correct.
So if it's you're making progress. And again, with student growth goals, like, you don't necessarily reach your goal, but as long as you're
Right.
showing that
Showing
you've met
improvement.
progress,
Right.
you've made, that's, check.
And if we were to say, the board, we want a new curriculum, but the district didn't do that, but they still show improvement in the score, we have to look at the score and saying, hey, our goal was to have the higher score, we've gotten the higher score. Just because it's not exactly what we wanted, we still are on the same page, right? We
Yes.
would give the context of that as well.
And are you evaluating whether you got the new curriculum, or are you evaluating whether the math scores are increased?
Right.
Right,
We're looking at
because-
the end result.
Because that's what you told him was
Got it.
the goal, was improve math scores, not, we expect you to buy new math curriculum.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yes.
Okay.
With that as something that we're working towards, at what point do we expect that we are making progress towards these goals? We started this in '23, so this is year 3 of a 5-year plan. So we're, what does that work out to be, 60% of the way there? And so we have 40% left of how much we can grow altogether. And so if we're not seeing any growth in a whole bunch of areas theoretically, what would be the appropriate action at that point?
Right, so I asked the question of, okay, well, what's the plan then? Here, we're looking at the same data for the last 3 years. What's the plan? What's not working? What are you thinking about changing? What's the new plan? And if they can answer the question, the superintendent.
Does it matter whether they answer the question? If the results are not showing up, the results aren't showing up, I mean, you have to base it on some amount of data.
Well, but that's the context, and that's exactly what Teresa was getting at. If we started something 3 years ago, some initiative to
Right.
change something, and we've realized 3 years into it, it's not improving. The question is, what are you doing about it? And if the answer is, I don't know, we're just gonna wait and see what happens next year, right? That's where I get concerned. If it's, you know what, we've given this 3 years, it's not working, we have now looked into it and we're gonna, change it to X or to Y or whatever. That's what for me as a board member, that's what I need to hear, because
You're looking for the plan.
I'm looking for the plan. And let's be honest, eliminating opportunity gaps, eliminating achievement gaps. If that was easy and solvable, we would have done it 40 years ago. So a lot of this stuff is hard, and there isn't easy options. And so like our district, and again, there's a 14-year experience gap between me and my next longest serving board member. So we were looking at graduation rates, and we were looking at them over the last 4 years. And my fellow board members were alarmed because they were going down. And I said, well, wait a minute, what were they in 2019? Oh, we're back to where we were in 2019. And then I was able to provide context of, we had these, we passed everybody in 2020.
Right.
And then we had these waivers, and right, so we had some artificially inflated graduation rates. That's the context matters. So it's not a one size fits all. If there's no growth, that's it, you're done, you're not doing your job. It's, okay, am I hearing an explanation that explains why the numbers aren't going up and a plan of how we're going to address it? Or am I
But we
not?
wouldn't, obviously the only board member that was here during that is President Margell. During the creation of the strategic plan.
Oh, the strategic plan?
Like the rest of the board was not a party to creating it. And so I'm curious, like, if we're saying that the numbers are hard, right? And I get that, they might be hard, but why were they put into the strategic plan?
Oh, and I'm not saying they're not the right expectations. We've got a strategic plan, very similar kind of things. We have a 95% attendance rate expectation in our strategic plan, which made complete sense when we made it in 2017, right? And we were pretty close to that goal in 2019, and then it fell off, right? And so this is a great example of context matters, of like, so we just had a really robust conversation last week as a board of, okay, we set this goal of 95% attendance rate back in 2017 when the world was a completely different space. Is that still a realistic goal of 95%, given that there's all these other understandings? Well, first of all, we really don't want kids coming to school sick. Please stay home with your little germy bodies. There's a mental health component to this, right? And it's a much more nuanced conversation than just, right? So that's what I'm talking about with context matters. If it was, nothing had happened, that we had no pandemic, and we were not seeing any changes in attendance rates, then we would be talking to our superintendent, what are you doing? Why is our attendance rate still where it's at, and what are you doing to improve it? Because we know kids learn when they're in school and not so successful.
Sandy, if I may, to the progress piece, and board was not around in the creation of the strategic plan current, that when we developed it, we also added the key performance indicators. And there's a dashboard that we created that actually has even more detail on progress and those pieces. And so I just want to share with you, those are the pieces that we do share with board in that digging deeper into those pieces. So we do have that.
I think the other thing that's important about these, because like, I've been on school visits, and, you know, you look at one of the measures is percentage of staff reporting a sense of belonging at work, and the baseline was 63%, and the target is 88% by 2028, right? That's in goal number 2. I've been at schools, and the sense of belonging by the staff is 90. So that school has exceeded that number, right? And you go to another school, and that sense of belonging is at 85. Like, it's close. It's not quite there. So, but the principal is like, this is what I'm doing to make that happen. So you can see how they're taking these measures and putting them at the school level, at the building level, to really target these things. And they talk about them. I mean, I just went on the learning walk last week, and they talk about these measures, and they're tracking it. They're tracking it using street data, and they're looking at panorama, and this is very important to them. So I see them really digging into these.
Want to reiterate, we're not doing the superintendent
No, I'm
evaluation.
just saying.
And you raised a very valid point,
But-
because there is a point where you say, okay, we haven't seen any improvement in this. What's the plan? And for me as a board member, it's the context of the answer for me. If I don't hear a plan that is thought through, or as any way seeming to be addressing the fact that nothing's changed, then I get concerned. If I hear okay, we tried this, it did not work, we're now gonna try X. Or we had a pandemic and it upended our attendance data, and now we're, rethinking, and what does this mean, and blah, blah, blah. Right, so it's about the answer, because that's what this is about. It's asking those questions of what are we doing to
I
address
just feel like
these?
that's very subjective, and that becomes a problem for me, because I do not want to rate our superintendent based on how I feel their answer was. And so, to me, it doesn't matter what your answer is. If the data isn't showing that you're making progress, you're not making progress. And how can I judge any of our staff at that level, saying that you need to be making you need to be making your goals, you need to be making progress towards these goals. And we don't treat anyone any different. We treat them all the same because we have these rubrics, and those rubrics are our standard, and that's where we come from. And we don't apply the same methodology to how we are going to be deciding what happens at the top, because that's, to me, is just as important.
But staff are allowed to submit artifacts and explanation and rationale, and I think that's exactly what this is this is artifacts, explanation, rationale.
I'm saying, yes, but if we have a 3-year period, like with a teacher, if you were to have them explain away, say, yeah, I'm doing these things different now, but you're at year 3, you're not at year 1. You've had 3 years to make those adjustments, and still the changes have not led to the growth that you said you could make, right? And you were the one that came up with those metrics, not me, right? I didn't decide those metrics. You said that this is where I can get to. How is that any different? To me, if you're saying that this is where we can be, and we're not there, and each time that we've done this evaluation process, we're still not there, at what point do you say, okay, well, I'm not seeing enough difference? And, we were told at the beginning that the data that we had wasn't there yet. And so I understood. I said, okay, well, we can't really work off of no data. But then the next year's data was, oh, well, it's still not quite there. We still need more data. Well, we're in year 3, and so we're getting to the point where in my opinion, we need to be looking at, this is the hard data now. You don't get to decide whether or not the data that we have is what you like anymore. You've had your chances to make the adjustments now.
Okay, so I'm
That's where
gonna
I'm at.
pause you. I hear what you're saying, and you're moving into your argument of how you're going to evaluate your superintendent.
Oh,
And
no.
so,
This is how I would evaluate any superintendent,
okay, and that's fine. And
or any staff member, honestly.
you just
if I were-
asked me how I would handle that, and I was telling you how that would get dealt with, right? Okay, we've got the evidence. I'm seeing evidence of how this is going to change or whatever. or I'm not. And then that, for me, that's how I would deal with that moment where data numbers haven't moved. It isn't always a pass, but I'm not going to throw someone, again, just me, I don't throw someone to the curb because there was a pandemic and that upended what the data looks like, right? So context matters for me, and it should for all of you, right? Because the world changes. Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about aspirational goals? And what that, how does your district ever set those?
Oh, yeah.
And like, truly, I would love to see 100% attendance. Wouldn't that be excluding sick kids? Okay, I get that. Maybe I don't want sick kids. But like, I would love to say 100% of our teachers would love to be in this job. It's not one of our rubrics. 10 years from now. That would be amazing, right? But we know that some people get into it and say, this isn't a career for me. And, you know, or life changes and, you know, I want to stay home with my kids or whatever those things are, like things that happen, right? And so that number realistically will never get to that 100%. And so when a district sets aspirational goals, can you just talk about kind of your thought process on that when you look at those?
Yeah, so we're a policy governance, so we evaluate our superintendent every board meeting on a different subset of the work. So we do, like, one meeting will do technology, one will do finance, one will do facilities, and then we have 5 goals in our strategic plan, so we do those, and that's the aspirational component. And so we vote on the evaluation in the board meeting that we've dealt with that. So our 5 strategic goals, the vote is, we believe the superintendent is making reasonable progress towards this, or the superintendent isn't making reasonable progress, or there wasn't enough evidence provided, or the options that our board. So that's how we address that. Are you making reasonable progress towards these aspirational goals? Then when it's more of a finite, like, you know, the budget, right? Then it's you met the requirements of this parameter, it's the fancy language. You met the requirements of what we expected of you for technology, or we met the requirements of what we expected of you for facilities. Then that's more of a, yep, you did it, or no, you didn't.
Yep. Thank you. It's a good perspective.
Yeah.
And so should we talk about dates?
Okay, yeah, so I just want to make sure, job description, make sure everybody's got a copy of the job description. And then the evidence that you're going to need to make this decision.
And that's submitted by the superintendent.
It is submitted by the superintendent. It's those key performance indicators that you have told the superintendent you expect based on the rubric you're using.
If I may, similar to the board policy, like there's when you go into there'll be a folder with information in there, so it's all electronic.
It's not something I have to go and dig out myself.
Oh, heavens, no.
That's what I was asking.
But there is an opportunity in the evaluation process that necessary staff are available for, hey, can you explain this to us? And, you know, why are these numbers, sometimes the charting is hard.
Okay, I'm going to push pause on that. Okay, let's come back to that. So first of all, dates. All that information will be available to you on April 22nd. And then May 6th is when you will meet together in executive session and have this evaluation conversation. Okay. If you have questions about the information or the data, you send them to Carolyn.
Yes, correct.
Right? And then Carolyn will, and normally you would do both, but because it's about Israel. So you would send them to Carolyn, and then Carolyn will get them to the right person, and then the whole board gets the answer back.
Correct, right.
So that everybody has the same understanding.
Sorry, my kids are talking to the Alexa and I keep getting notifications.
That's okay. It's,
Yeah.
we all have those fun family moments.
And again, just like any other board policy or things that we cannot discuss it like in email together. We shouldn't be, like, when we're sending a note to Carolyn, we're gonna send it directly to her. Nobody else is copied. We're gonna be like, I need clarification on this number. And she will then send it back to us and say, this
Yep.
was asked,
Yep.
here's the answer.
Yep.
And we all get the question and answer, but
Yes.
we should not email everybody.
No.
Just like anything else.
This is a
Yes.
serial
Just to
meeting.
clarify, I was
Yes.
talking about the night of, when the board is all together,
Yes.
that if the board asks a question, there's somebody available for us to, and they answer to the board that night.
In
Yeah.
executive
Yes.
session.
In
Yes.
executive
Yes.
session.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and just a reminder of some key rules of executive session. Whatever's said in executive session stays in executive, just like going to Las Vegas, nothing leaves the room.
It's like Fight Club.
And any notes that you take down can be discoverable.
Yes.
So don't write any, I just tell my board, don't write anything down. Right? And then you don't have to worry about that. Okay, I'll just give you a little horror story. It wasn't a superintendent evaluation, but the Everett School District was appointing a new board member, and they were in executive session, and they had rubrics, and they had an applicant that they wanted to appoint to the board, and their rubric, they weren't the number one vote getter, and so then they redid it. And they still weren't the number one vote getter, but then they appointed them. And we know all of this because they wrote it all down. And it got discovered in a public records request. And so,
That's amazing.
don't write it down. Okay. All right, so that's it. And then the evaluation will be in executive session on May 6th. And then you will have a vote. You don't vote on the evaluation. The evaluation doesn't get voted on, but it gets written up in work with Israel, and then it is a public document. And then you will vote on his contract.
And that happens in a public meeting.
And that will be in a general business meeting. Usually it's the first meeting in June. Yeah. Okay. All right, there's a thing about WASDA model policies. I'm just, was asked to just explain how they work. I've had to get a PhD in WASDA model policies as WASDA president, so let me explain WASDA model policies. So when the state, federal government passes a law, or a court, Washington State Supreme Court, US Supreme Court issues a ruling, somebody needs to take that and create a policy for school districts to use. And as a school district, you have two choices, because it needs to be a lawyer that takes that law or that court case and make it into a policy. You can either hire a lawyer, and I say this with our friend
Hi, Curtis.
Curtis
Curtis.
on the thing. You can pay your own lawyer to do this. It will cost you tens and twenties of thousands of dollars to do that with all of the court cases and all of the state and federal laws.
It's a full-time job.
It's a full-time job to do that. Or for like $1,000, you can pay WASDA to have their WASDA lawyer do it for you. And so like 290 districts of the 295 districts in Washington State pay WASDA because it is a screaming deal on getting it done. So that's why they're called WASDA model policies. Their attorney coordinates, works with other attorneys in the AG's office and OSPI. They work with experts in the field of whatever the law is to create that model policy. And then for those of us, the 290 districts that pay for this $1,000, you then get those policies as they're updated. Some are, we extremely recommend that you adopt this kind of thing. And then some are, it would be a good idea, ponder it. Couple of things about those policies. You can change them. They're model policies, is what's recommended. You can we call it North Shore Eyes. You can add language in or take language out to make it appropriate for your community. You then need to run it past your attorney to make sure that you haven't done something that will then later get you sued. I say this as an attorney myself. I spend so much of my time trying to keep our money in the classroom and out of lawyer pockets. So be mindful when you go to change a policy of, is this worth the money that we're going to have to pay our attorney to make sure that we haven't done something that will get us sued, that we then have to pay money for an attorney to fight the case. So there are sometimes moments where you tweak some language, it's minor language, to make it appropriate for your district. And then I'm not worried about Kent, but we have districts in the state that want to totally upend those model policies because they don't like the law behind it.
Right, which is different.
Which is different. So you adopt the policy. The staff then takes that policy and creates the procedure that sits underneath that policy that's in alignment with that law.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep. When a court ruling, let's say the 9th District Court has ruled, but we know it's gonna go to the Supreme Court, I've noticed that WASDA will pause. They wait until it finishes in the court before they come out. And they said they do that because they don't wanna like adopt and then, 30 days later, oh, we were wrong. So I see that their policies are delayed like 6 months. It's like I see them delaying. Is that common that they do that?
It depends. So yes, if it is something, and I would say, I'm just gonna go political here. If something goes to the 9th Circuit and then it gets appealed to the US Supreme Court, you can lay the odds that they're gonna wait because it is not highly likely that what the 9th Circuit ruled will be what the US Supreme Court rules. Sometimes.
Right.
But sometimes not. And so, yes, they'll wait. Usually for state laws, there is a deadline of when that has to happen, and it's often much shorter. And so that is, usually you'll see, like the stuff that just got passed is probably got like a June 30th, July 30th deadline for WASDA.
Right.
That they have to create that model policy by.
Got it.
There have been 2 moments in the last couple years, not because of anything Kent or North Shore did, but the state stepped in and said, you have to adopt this model policy.
Got it.
That is a movement that the state legislature is taking on, again, not because of anything we have done, but there were districts that were choosing not to adopt the model policy, and the state didn't like that. So state legislature didn't like that. So I don't know if that's a trend. I don't know if that's gonna, they're gonna continue to do that. It doesn't help us to have, but that is something that's happened a couple times in the last few years, that they have required that you adopt the WASDA model
So
policy.
typically there is it's not immediate. There's a delay. They look at something. They're hedging their bets basically to make sure that they're.
It's not a hedging their bets. So if it's a state or federal law that gets passed, there is a timeline that they have to get
there is a timeline for those. I'm talking about like
A court case?
A court case.
It really just is gonna depend
On
on
what
the-
it is.
on what it is.
Okay.
And where it goes.
I know I flagged for myself because I'm in this role and I'm like, what are the laws that they're looking at? Because then I want to be able to be intelligent to be like, where is this policy? Or when are they going to do this? So for myself, that's why I was just clarifying.
Yeah. Most of cases that are going to impact us are special ed cases, and usually those, once the ruling comes out,
Right.
you can take that to bank, that's a new law. It's the Bremerton case, the opting out of curriculum case that came out of Maryland. Those are the kind of things that they're going to kind of watch and see what happens. And again, it's based on the makeup of the Supreme Court, whether that's really going to change things.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions on WASDA model policies? And then, like I said, staff puts together the procedures. Okay, next up, in addition to the superintendent evaluation, it is best practice for the board to do a self-evaluation. And good news is WASDA has the self-evaluation process, and it's free to use. And so it is something that Megan and I believe several other board members have decided this is something that the Kent board should do.
And has done in the past.
And has done in the past.
Yes, I think Director Cook has been part of it, Director Song has been part of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it has been done in the past at some point, and it will be a new experience for the rest of you. Okay. So it's an evaluation tool. Tonight there was a strategic plan on my part when I had you look at Board Standard 3E, because that is part of the evaluation. And so there you got to see one of little glimpse into the self-evaluation process, and so giving you a sense of what. So you are going to get that tool. You're going to get a link. Carolyn will send you a link on May 1st to the evaluation. It takes about 20, 30 minutes to fill it out, so it's not a fast one. There's about 75 things that you evaluate on, and it's a range from I have no idea to terrible to great, right? Kind of.
Is it those terrible to great?
That's what I'm gonna envision now.
Yeah, no, it's I don't know.
Unsat, basic,
Unsat,
proficient,
basic.
Yeah,
mastery.
exactly. Yeah, very similar to that. But there is also I have no idea, and that is totally okay. I don't know. So.
Does not apply.
Yep, that's, especially for new board members, please feel free to take advantage of the I don't know.
I have no idea.
I have no idea. Our district, again, is policy governance, and there's some of those questions like, that's not anything we even look at. I have no idea what's going on there. So, okay. You have 2 weeks to fill it out. And
Do I have to
then
do it in one sitting, or will it save my progress?
it will save your progress.
Oh,
Fantastic.
nice. Okay, great.
I'm fairly certain.
I'm gonna quote you on it.
Yeah, okay, I will let him know. Dude, I had to fill out some form the other day, and I was like, seriously, how have we not gotten to that advanced technology of saving my progress? Why do I have to start all over again?
Right.
Or being able to see what's coming? Yeah. Okay, 2 weeks, and then WASDA process it, packages it in a way that makes sense and readable, and then on our June 3rd retreat, I will be here to facilitate you going through the evaluation and helping you set some goals for the next year.
Sounds awesome. I'm
Okay.
excited. I'm excited for self-eval.
Yeah, it's some good questions, and it's a good chance to kind of reflect. It is a little tricky because it is neutral on whether you are evaluating yourself as a board member or the board as a whole. And so that is some things.
Oh, it
we-
doesn't differentiate in the questions? Interesting.
Huh. That's odd.
So
We are a board of
you can
Well, I know,
answer,
but
you know, as me as a board member, here's what I think I'm doing, or
Right.
here's the board as a whole, and we can tease that out. That's part of the work. But I'll just prep you with that. Okay, yeah, so what I have written down, so we're gonna do the self-assessment. That does take about an hour and a half to 2 hours typically. And we wanna have a conversation around committees, charters, structure of all your committees, start kind of getting a sense of what that looks like. So we'll talk between now and then of how that conversation will look, but start getting an understanding of what you have and what maybe isn't working the way you hoped and so forth. And then conversation around community engagement for the 27-28 budget planning session. And then I am going to highly suggest that we do board level's role in the EP&O planning, because if you're going to put it on your November ballot, you guys are going to have to vote on that, I think, in August.
July, wasn't it?
June of next year? Right, so, well, but this is my point. We need to get you guys aware of what your role is in putting something on the ballot and how you have that conversation of dates and what you're gonna ask for in the EPNO and where your role is. So I think we need to have that conversation during the retreat on June 3rd.
Okay.
Because if you do it in November, and again, that's the board's decision of when it goes on the ballot, so we're gonna wanna talk about all the pros and cons of different dates and so forth. So I think that should be part of our conversation June 3rd. So we are gonna be busy bees in the next couple months. Okay.
That's a double Diet Coke night.
Superintendent Bella?
Yeah, no, thank you. I just wanted to first thank our board for being here tonight and engaging in the 3 topics. I also want to thank Mr. Parangua and Ms. Tyler, who had to leave. They've been working really, really hard, not just for tonight, but over the past 2 or 3 years. As I know Sandy has shared, she saw our website in all the communication, the engagement, and all the pieces we've done. It takes a team. So thank you to my staff. And then finally, thank you to Sandy. Glad that you're back with us and continuing to work with us as a board superintendent governance team. And I know that we are proud to have you helping us and supporting us as we move forward together. So thank you, President Margell.
Thank you. Sandy, anything? Okay. Well, from the board, thank you very much for your leadership today, kind of as we tackle some really big topics that really shape not just the board work, but the district as a whole. Thank you to administration, superintendent, and your team, particularly Raul, your team. We know that there's been a lot of work that goes into these. And it's not always the things that we want to celebrate, right? We never want to celebrate budget cuts, but that we're doing it in a thoughtful manner, and that there's engagement from all around it. So thank you for leading us through that tonight. So with that, it is 7:59, and we are adjourned.